Yeah, man. Well, turn it up, man.
Let's just go in and, like, kill all the orcs, right? They're the bad guys, who gives a shit? We just hack and slash and we loot their dead bodies, right? Hack and slash, kill them all, you know, conquer the infidels.
Boy, that campaign sounds like a barrel of fun, doesn't it?
Somebody who's opening a refrigerator and leaning in, right, is the language of a woman. Somebody who's opening their refrigerator and being cut off halfway through that lean is the voice of like a mermaid or a siren.
They're utter shits. They're utter shits.
This is not the face of the hobby anymore. And I think there's been mistakes made in years past where people assumed that D&D players were all, you know, white dudes in a basement, which has been a faulty assumption for a lot of years and gets more and more false every day. And so it's, in my viewpoint, honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough.
I just had to be born with empathy and a weakness for socialism and femboys. For socialism and femboys.
For socialism and femboys.
You gotta put a little hot sauce on the taco, you know what I mean?
We want this dwarf to be the dwarfiest dwarf.
Right.
We want the elf to be the elfiest elf.
And just the dashiest dash of Tabasco.
Their voices need to carry across water.
I'm a creative. It's a huge drain, right? Because fans can be awful.
They're utter shits.
When we got the descriptions, they were very adamant. They were like, try not to make it like a white blonde guy. Like, please, like, we love him, but there's like 500 million of them.
You say white lives matter, they don't. White lives don't matter because white lives aren't a thing.
Lube for their rectal adventures.
What's this?
What's this? It's the jacket.
The jacket.
The jacket.
Lutherville, Marina Del X, Otisburg. Otisburg? Who's this monster? She's got her own place. Otisburg? It's a little bitty place. Otisburg? Okay, I just wiped it off. That's all. It's a little town.
One girl said she liked big burly orcs with breeding kinks. Okay, I'll just choose the orc boyfriend for her then.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live! Fuck it! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live! Fucking thing sucks!
Yeah. 5, 4, 3. Great, Sam!
We dumping chump. It's a landslide, sir.
On guard. It's time to mobilize. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
A giant penis.
Did you cry? So much. I went into the house and my wife was like, "What's wrong?" And I just crawled onto her and sobbed.
Oh my God.
And here we go. Here we go. How are we doing out there, peeps? Got some news for you, some sad news. I am by myself today. That's right. I told Crazy Mouse and Rogan they could take a trip to Otisburg, go shopping, have some fun. Actually, I had some very annoying computer troubles right before us, so we are doing this old school style on the laptop. So I hope everything is coming through nice and clear. I can see you. I can see DB for $5. Yardog Brothers and Sword Sisters. Time for some sword and sorcery skullduggery. Don't you know it? Hope everyone's week is going well. Let's crack-a-lack some skulls. Amen to that. Amen to that. Looks like everyone is here. You know what? I know why you're all here. You're not here to see me today. You're here to see this guy. Jeff Talanian. How you
How's it
doing?
going? Excellent. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Here, let me get you where you rightfully ought to be here, front and center. You are, of course, creator of the fantasy RPG Hyperborea.
Yes, sir.
And we actually kind of ran into each other by happenstance. I was doing a stream at Origins, and actually, did you notice that big arena they had set up kind of next to your table? There was like a big,
that's pretty nice.
Well, I saw that from the aisle over, and I was about ready to go, and I'm like, I got something cool to show you guys, and I was going to show them that, and then I walked by, and I'm like, wait, that's Hyperborea, and
I realized you were streaming live, and I thought you were just a nutcase walking around talking to yourself.
Yes,
talking. Like, okay, he answers himself.
Yeah, people often think that. People often think that. So it was like I said, a happy accident because I always I really dug the look of your game. In fact, I think it might have been part of like a Humble bundle or something like a year or so ago, and I did pick it up just the PDFs. And I was like, oh, this is cool, but it's kind of one of those things. I'm still a little old school. To kind of kickstart me into really getting into something, I need the physical book there, and then sometimes I'll get into the PDF, which is better for for my eyesight. So I was glad that I kind of met you and then bought this stuff, and like I said, now we're here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What, I guess, where you're from, how did you get into gaming? And I guess we'll take it from there. And I know you're a big fan of the Holmes box, whereas a lot of folks like me are kind of into Moldvay. So go ahead, expound if you will.
Sure. So I grew up in northern Massachusetts in a town called Methuen. And when I was a kid, when I was in the 5th grade, I was introduced to D&D by another one of the kids in school during. It was a snowstorm outside, and they had indoor recess, and this kid had brought this game into school, and we started to play. And the thing that I remember the most about it was, I saw that I had just recently read The Hobbit. I was in the 5th grade, and I saw that I could play a hobbit or, a halfling. And he said, what do you want to name your character? And I said, Bilbo Baggins. And he said, no, you can't do that. It's that name's already taken. I said, oh, I didn't know that. So, kids making up rules. And I said, how about Balbo Baggins? I'll be his cousin. He said, okay. So we played basic D&D, and then we had so much fun that we decided to meet after school and continue the game. We were playing Keep on the Borderlands. So it was 1981.
Re-arc.
Yeah. So shortly after that, I put it on my my Christmas list that I wanted this game, Dungeons and Dragons, and that was one of those weird years. It was either the Sears Wish book or the J.C. Penney catalog. It was like one of those, and it had D&D was solicited in those catalogs back then. So I ended up getting the Holmes box set for Christmas, and then I became the dungeon master of my neighborhood friends, and became basically a DM for life at that point. With once in a while I'll play, but I'm that guy that's always usually running the show.
So, like, were you making your own worlds like right from the start, or were you kind of, because I kind of tell people kind of the way it was, at least in our area, in the like early 80s, it's like a lot of people just kind of bought the adventures and just kind of ran them. You know what I mean? The story.
Yeah. So I kind of started that way, and then I picked up Greyhawk. And at the time, when I was only about 11 years old, I looked at all the volumes of text in that original. I believe that was 1983, so I would have been 12 by then. But I was looking at all the volumes of text in that box set, and I said, I can't read all this and remember all this. This is too much for me to do to run a game. So what I did is I took that Darlene map and I basically made up the world on my own, just using the map and placing different D&D adventures in places on that map when I was a kid. And it was funny because I became so fascinated with Walt Simonson's run on Thor back in the 80s. It was a classic storyline that he wrote and drew. So I wanted to emulate my D&D campaign sort of after that, a sort of Norse-inspired Ragnarok campaign that, had orcs and things like that in it too,
Right.
And I was running games of high adventure for the neighborhood kids.
Nice. Now you mentioned comics, Walt Simonson, Thor. You actually owned a comic shop for a while, did you not?
Yeah, I did it throughout the 90s. I had a comic book shop / baseball cards and gaming stuff. I had a big gaming shelf. It was, but that was during the heyday of second edition D&D, and also all those settings that were being published at that time. I was carrying all that stuff, as well as it hit the scene really big during those years too. Was like Vampire
Yeah.
Werewolf the Apocalypse. I could never get into those games. It was more like play acting to me. I've never been into those type of storytelling type games. That was never my cup of tea, but they became hugely popular. And then, as we know, Magic the Gathering came out, and that was like that, that probably paid my rent a lot of months back in those days.
I think it's still paying rent for a lot of the remaining comic book owners too.
Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned second edition. That's even though I remember, vividly getting the Moldvay box and playing a couple of times, and so and so's going to run Tomb of Horrors. Someone's going to run Queen of the Demon Web Pits. It wasn't actually until second edition that I started DMing pretty much full time from like 1991 on, right up till today. I've pretty much averaged running, almost like weekly games. So I have even though I know it's an imperfect system, second edition, I have fond memories of it. And you're right. There was so many great settings for it. It was just this kind of weird time where they pumped out great settings, and then it's like they almost stopped doing it. I think it's because they thought they were competing with themselves. I think Ryan Danson
Hard to follow it all. A lot of the settings I thought were really cool and inspired. It was the content that followed them that I wasn't into. I found myself falling back to AD&D adventure modules because they ran like an adventure with a dungeon and a wilderness and stuff like that. I felt like a lot of the adventure modules for second edition, when you opened it up, it was these walls of text about the histories of these various places, and it didn't read like an adventure. It read like amateur fiction to me.
Yeah, I can see that. What I did, and I don't know if you know this, but like Birthright, I can only be tied, Jeff, because I always say I have the longest running Birthright campaign going, because it's still going. Yeah, and it's we're just taking a little bit of a break now, but it's been going since it came out, because I got the box set a couple weeks later. I'm like, let's start a campaign, and from those humble beginnings, like 30 years later, it's still going. But I do know what you mean in that. What you end up doing a lot, especially if you're in a weekly game, is especially when you're a 20-some-year-old and you got stuff, there's like women and, going out with your friends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You lean on pre-printed stuff. So what I leaned on a lot was old dungeon adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of incorporating some of those. And then I would buy, just like you said, some of the older even 1E adventures that were around. I would kind of shoehorn those in a little bit, dress them up a little. I always called myself the Ed Wood of DMs. I could, it's kind of like on a cheap budget with like shoestrings and duct tape. I could kind of make you think like you were in something halfway decent, but usually it was just kind of a reskin of something else.
Right. I see. Crafty Matt in the chat brought up Dark Sun, which is that one I thought was really wild. that was one of my favorites because it had a weird sword and sandal, sword and sorcery type of feel to it, and like he just mentioned, that Brahm art was just incredible.
Yeah, it was a setting I always loved the look of, but we were already into Birthright, and before that a little bit into Planescape. But man, the art was just so kick ass in that. It just honestly, it looked like kind of like such a bleak world. I was almost intimidated to run it. Not like, ooh, it's it was just like, what's going to be in what's in this world, just kind of on the face of it, it looked like just such a barren wasteland. But as I've looked through some of the stuff over the years, I'm like, oh man, what a missed opportunity. This thing kicks ass.
Yeah, one of the things that scared away a lot of people back then from playing Dark Sun is that it had a strong psionics component to it, and a lot of people didn't really want that in their games back then because you had a bad taste in your mouth from how it was presented in earlier editions, that you just couldn't grasp how it was supposed to function. And then when you did figure it out, the characters that ended up having it seemed so overpowered compared to other characters and what they could achieve.
Yeah, it seemed like always a bridge too far, the whole psionics thing. We were like, oh, are we going to do psionics in this little mini campaign or adventure? And the answer was always no. It's like nobody wanted to bother. Nobody wanted to learn the rules. And if I was DMing, I certainly didn't want to be the one who had to police all that stuff.
Right.
So this is Soraz, Master of Doom, $4.99. I've been playing a Hyperborea 3E game for nearly 2 years with guys I met
that's awesome.
on the Discord. Cool. Just sunk a pirate ship with Call Lightning. Amazing game.
That's awesome.
There you go.
We just had so in my home game, one of the adventure modules that we published about 8 years ago by Tim Callahan called The Beasts of Cragath Manor. I never had the opportunity to run it straight through from my weekly gang, and we have been kind of running through it with a lot of other stuff going on in the campaign, and they blew up the manor with Call Lightning. So I was telling guys, it's one of those things. I ran that adventure probably at 8 different conventions, and of course my home group is the only one that comes up with the idea, like, let's just fucking blow up the house.
Well, they'll always surprise you.
Right.
They'll always surprise you. My one friend, sometimes, my friends would spell me for a little bit when I needed a break, and he famously ran a Star Wars little mini campaign, and we blew up his hut villain with a bunch of thermal detonators in like the second session. He rolled with it to his credit, but yeah, they will always keep you on your toes. I'm going to show something here. I actually just kind of wanted to for folks to see. Now I think I put the link for Jeff's website where you can buy Hyperborea in the description to this live stream. So let me, no problem. Hey, what? We can just kind of take a look here. And we're going to circle back to your history a little bit, but a lot of folks are here for Hyperborea. Beautiful. I do love the cover because it tells what this is about. It can be, kind of just sword and sorcery, but there's also a little bit of super science if you want it, right?
Sure, and a lot of the classic settings in fiction had a lot of those elements in it. They were less inclined to restrict themselves the way it seems some gaming publishers would be in their definitions of what sword and sorcery is. So you could have Carl Edward Wagner's Kane series, where he would have all kinds of ancient scientific relics that are littered about the world. Michael Moorcock's Hawkmoon is a great example of sword and sorcery and science fiction sort of merging together. And there's countless other examples. One of the things that I cut my teeth on from a young age was Thundar the Barbarian. That had a huge impact on me as a kid, and I remember it so fondly. It's my favorite cartoon that I ever had watching growing up. So I really those were the kinds of things that made their mark on me.
Oh
And
yeah.
also, of course, reading a lot of Jack Vance and different different pulp fiction authors that had just all kinds of content like that merged random science fiction elements with sword and sorcery.
Yeah, like you said, they weren't constrained by anything because there was no like, oh, well, you kind of have to keep this,
Right.
sword and sorcery. It's like, well, no, we're gonna do what sells, what's fun to read. Sometimes as a DM, maybe it's that's the way you should go. Chris Miller here for $10, our friend. Did Jeff ever play TSR's Conan box set by Zeb Cook?
I never went as far as that box set for running that game system straight, but what I did was I took those original modules that David Cook wrote, the ones that actually have Arnold on the cover, and I just blended them with my AD&D games and used content from those. So I did and I didn't, I suppose. I didn't run the TSR Conan game straight as it was created. And I think David Cook sort of followed up years later on the internet with a sort of generic version of the rule system from that game called Zephyrs. And it was a sort of him just sort of releasing his rule set for what he was doing with those Conan rules that he developed in the late 80s.
Yeah, from what I never played it. I remember. I think I either had or saw the first. I think it was called Conan Unchained, the first one.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, so I had that, and kind of like you, it looked like it was kind of cool, maybe to just kind of blend in. But as far as the game system itself, I never even really saw it where we were. And then kind of reading later on, they kind of said this magic system was a little unbalanced, to say the least.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that module.
Oh boy!
So
By the way, thank you, Chris. Chris Miller's our friend. And by the way, stay tuned, guys. I will be giving away a free edition of Mad Scribe magazine towards the end of the stream here. So you're going to want to stick around. There you go. Go ahead. Your story about Conan Unchained.
Oh yeah. So I had the module when I was a kid, but it got lost or destroyed. So at some point in the early 2000s, I decided I would get another copy. So I was searching on eBay and I found one and I bought it from this guy, and it shows up and it's in shrink wrap. And I was like, wow, so now I have it in shrink wrap. I don't even want to open this thing. Fast forward, maybe 7 or 8 years later at a Gary Con, I learned that Zeb Cook and the artist, Jeff Butler, were going to be in attendance. So I brought the module with me to the con to get signed. And when I brought it up to Zeb, I ripped off the shrink wrap for him to sign it. And he thought I was a nut.
Yeah,
it's had in shrink wrap for 40 years, and I was ripping it off for him to sign it.
Yeah, live on a stream a little while back, I had lost over the years my blue box Moldvay expert set, and I bought one off of eBay, and it was still shrink wrapped. Something had punctured it, like you could tell something had fallen on it, but it was still in the original shrink wrap. And I'm like, should I open it? And I'm like, I was asked the chat, I'm like, what do you guys think? They're like, yeah, open it, enjoy it. And I'm like, you know what? It's meant to be enjoyed. Let's do it. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah, he's part of you.
Right.
Yeah,
if I could digress, the picture that you have up there now is by Ian Agley, who was the original interior artist for Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. And so he did all the interior art, and that picture there was his sort of tipping of the cap to David Sutherland's A Paladin in Hell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell. You got the fiends there in the background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one kind of caught me. The one thing I hate about my computer going down is I had kind of called, kind of like my 20 favorite images from the referee's manual and the player's handbook, and I just kind of made a little slideshow. So
Oh, nice.
we're just kind of have to do it little impromptu here. Some of the stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Kind of see some of the class. I do love, when you put like, the headshots of every class here, and
Right.
I love kind of the subclasses. It's like, yeah, you have the 4 main ones, and then you can go into, all right, you don't have to just be a magic user. You can be a cryomancer, illusionist, necromancer, pyromancer, witch.
Right.
What kind of inspired you to kind of go in that direction when making the game?
So, I loved all the original subclasses in AD&D, and then I also they would have in Dragon Magazine back in the day, they would have what they would call NPC classes, but a lot of us were using what they called NPC classes as regular classes. And then, a lot of those became official classes or kits, if you would, in second edition. And a lot of them I really liked. There was some that I didn't like. And I also wanted to do some things in which I put my own stamp on some of these classes. But one of my primary goals with creating each of these subclasses was that they would each have their sort of unique flair. So they each follow sort of an archetype. None of the classes in Hyperborea are classes in which you are plugging and playing the different abilities that your character may have. There are a few things that you can choose. Like, for example, when you start a shaman, you get to pick from 2 different schools of magic. On the ecclesiastic side, you can pick either druidic spells or cleric spells, and then on the more sorceress side of things, you can pick either the magician or the necromancer. So there is some degree of choice. Of course, a fighter can choose what kind of weapon he masters and things like that. But for the most part, what this game follows is the old school style in which character classes are archetypes. So take the cryomancer that you brought up, for example. The cryomancer, yes, it has a bunch of the same spells that a magician would have, but not all the spells a magician would have. And they also have some specialty ice and cold spells that no other class has access to. So it helps to give them their own unique flair, that they can do these things that other classes can't. And so that's one of the sort of the design philosophies that I embraced right from the get-go in the creation of this game.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. We'll go with Spin Gypsy's super chat here for $5. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, my books are in the mail. There you go, Jeff. Got you a sale. What's the best way to dive in when they come? Where to start? What would you tell somebody who's got the books in front of them? Like, what's like the best way to like dive in? Do a quick and dirty adventure.
Sure, I would say that. My advice to anyone when they're starting a campaign is don't in the referee's manual of the game, we have a complete gazetteer of the realm that describes all the lands, the religions, the festivals, everything of that nature, right? You don't have to absorb all that and be ready to run all that. My advice for anyone starting a campaign is to start small. Start in a village somewhere,
Yes.
and expand it out from there, and let it sort of develop organically. I think when you run a campaign in which the characters are expected to save the world or something like that, it becomes a larger than life experience that can be hard to run. I think for when you're just starting out and you're trying to get your sea legs, as it were.
Well,
So
it's more work for the DM too. It's more work for the DM if you start big. When you just have a little village and maybe the surrounding 6 points of interest around it. That's all you need. And
right, and you can. It doesn't have to be a railroad in a village too. You can have, like you just said, multiple points of interest. You can seed that little village area with different things that those characters can interact with, and sort of giving them that that latitude, that choice to go in whichever direction they want. So maybe there's an ancient crypt in the area. Maybe there's been an abduction, or maybe there's been strange occurrences going on that they're investigating, or maybe there's a character that's a druid in the party that is been tasked with doing something for his or her order, and is assembling adventurers to do something. It could be anything like that.
I'm a huge.
I think when you start small, you can build it out. So also, to answer his question, the book sort of takes you through the process, the introductory chapters on character creation, and sets you up with the basics that you need to know. So when you see like even the player's manual, it may look intimidating because it's a 300-page book. But what you have to keep in mind is that there's a large portion of that book that is dedicated to spells. And you don't need to know what all those spells are when you're just starting a campaign. You just need to know, if you have a guy that's a magician in the party, what spells is he picking out, and have a basic knowledge of how those work. Actually, I put a lot of that for anyway. I do with my players anyway. I put that sort of stuff on the shoulders of my players, in which I expect them to I don't want to have to dig into a book to know the duration of a spell. You're casting the spell. Tell me what the range and duration is if you're casting it. So you put some responsibility on them as well, I always think.
Chainsaw, 1999. Very generous of you. Thank you so much. Robocop on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, I would go 10 on Robocop. It's one of my all-time favorite films.
How could you not like it?
Creep.
Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah, 10 here too. I also love when I think the WCW back in the day had like a Robocop storyline. Like they had like the wrestler like Sid Vicious fighting Robocop.
Oh,
it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Sid Vicious was great. He was such an intense guy. He was an interesting character because back in the day in wrestling, I guess he was also a semi-professional softball player. So he used to take several months off from the wrestling circuit, which I guess would bother some of the promoters when he worked for them, because he would take months off from the year and wouldn't perform. But when he did, my God, he was a beast.
I mean, he had the look. He had the look like when you think like, oh, what does a pro wrestler from the 80s look like? Like that's it. I mean,
that's it. Yeah.
It's like sculpted out of like stone, like.
Right.
And you're right. And you know what? Like it's a shame too, because he passed this past
year. Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
But he's one of these guys who, and I don't think, who knows? I think he ended up having like a brain tumor or something. But it's like him playing softball I think it was just him going home. He wasn't like dazzled by the lifestyle of,
right.
Like, he just wanted to go home to like Arkansas and play softball with his buddies.
Is that where he was from? I don't even know.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe he was from Arkansas. He was a good old boy. Yeah, but he was my favorite wrestler. So
okay, cool. Yeah. My favorite was it's kind of a tie. I loved the Macho Man growing up, but I was enamored of Mr. Perfect. I was just so fascinated by him.
Oh yeah, he was good. Yeah, he was a good wrestler.
Yeah,
he was really
one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. If you look it up, you can find it was when Mr. Perfect fought Bret the Hitman Hart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will check that out. Yeah, because everybody always points. Everybody always points to Macho Man versus Steamboat at WrestleMania.
Yeah,
yeah, but I'll definitely check that one out. Spin Gypsy for 2. F it. I pulled the shrink wrap off my B3 Orange when I got it. There you go. Yeah,
that's the spirit.
You can't take it with you. You might as well enjoy it, right?
Right. What are you going to do? Die someday and your kids will throw it away?
Pretty much. Snake Oil Sean, 5 memberships. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you very, 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 very much. I got a couple more here. Go ahead and get through these. P.S. Caglione 3 for $10. The
Oh, very
books
nice.
are beautiful. Yes, they are. In fact, I'll put myself front here for just a moment.
Of course.
Not for any. This is one of the ones you recommended.
Yes, sir. The Anthropophagi of Zambala. That is that's an adventure module written by Corey Walden, and it is inspired by the Robert E. Howard short story, "The Man-Eaters of Zambula." So it's it features a cannibal tribe that is sort of harassing this small city in the desert, and it's a complete adventure that takes place out in this desert that has like a dungeon complex nearby and all that. It's a great fun adventure. I remember it fondly, running it for my group years ago in the before it was published. It was fun to test it out.
It looks fun. Yeah, I was reading it at Origins when I bought it that day when I met you. I kind of like the look of it. Yeah, so I'll be looking to run it in some format. Thank you so much, P.S. Caglione, for your generous super chat. Are we all caught up? Hyperborean. I got a feeling he's a fan of yours. 25 PLNs. I got the leather-like edition. Oh, cool. And it's incredible. Everyone wants to hold these books. Yeah, I can imagine. And take a look inside. Fantastic release, Mr. Talanian.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. These kinds of things, it starts off as a labor of love. When I first decided that I was going to create this game, I never imagined that I would be on, even on a show like this one day, and that I would be doing this as my full-time gig. I created it with the idea that I wanted to make a game that I wanted to play with my beer drinking buddies, and if other people wanted to buy it, that would be awesome. And as it turned out, a lot of people were like of mind who were looking for an old school game with a strong sword and sorcery vibe to it. Not that there's anything wrong with the Tolkien style elves and dwarves and hobbits and whatnot, the high fantasy tropes. I do love that stuff as well. But I always was my favorite stuff was always like reading Savage Sword of Conan and reading different pulp fiction books when I was young. That was my favorite stuff. And like I mentioned, like Thundar the Barbarian and different types of fantasy films that were released back in the 80s that I used to watch over and over, like Beastmaster and Deathstalker, things like that. I just love that stuff growing up. And so I wanted to make a game that sort of touched on these things that I loved, Krull, things like that. I just loved it all. And so it's an amazing thing to me. It's an honor to know that people enjoy the game and support the game and are willing to stay along for the ride and keep supporting my stuff.
You and Greg, I think, have a shared love of Krull, because in Dragon Slayer he put the Cyclopsmen as a playable race.
Yes, yeah, I love Dragon Slayer. I think that's probably my favorite version of the as far as the lineage of BX goes.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I always would put I kind of have a stock, when people say, hey, Wizards of the Coast, they're kind of going a different direction these days. Same with Paizo. What do you recommend? So kind of over time, I kind of built up this list, and I'm proud to say you're on it now. And I would always say Castles and Crusades.
Checks in the mail.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, Castles and Crusades, great. Troll Lord games, love that. Dragon Slayer, of course, love Greg, friend of mine. I would even throw in there Shadow Dark now, just for folks who kind of want a lifeline from, what Wizards of the Coast is doing.
We've played it, my group. We've because sometimes, like I said, once in a while I get to step away from the DM's chair and actually play a little bit. And one of the guys in my crew has run it a number of times, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's a nice little game, and I don't say that like, oh, a cute little game, huh? I mean, I consider it an excellent like short-term campaign or convention. game.
Sure.
I'm not sure how, not a lot of choices for the character, so I'm not sure how long it would last, for like a long-term campaign.
Right.
But for short term, it plays well, it scales well, and yeah, we dig it.
Right.
And of
For
course,
long-term campaign play, I've had the same concerns when I look at it, and but you can almost see that she laid the groundwork for that, for sort of a basic version of the game that could then be expanded upon with more spells, more magic items, more mundane items, even because even like the weapons list is sort of limited, and even you could come up with more unique character classes for it. So but I think it has a very strong foundation from which she can build it, and from which she is building it. I believe she had just another hugely successful Kickstarter that she ran.
Yeah, and I was of course be prepared to be called a simp now that you've praised her, because it can't just be honest. An honest assessment. It's always like, oh well, the reason you like that game is because it was created by a woman. And it's like, no, it's like it was a cagey move to kind of strip down 5e, and just kind of a lot of it has to do with like the look too. I mean, the look of the game is it has a cohesive look, and that helps. It helps your
it has
game.
an
It helps
aesthetic to it.
Greg's. Yeah, that's one reason I think Old School Essentials is as solid as it is. It kind of doesn't have a cohesive kind of a feel or look to it. And not that it's a bad game by any stretch. But people are going to be drawn to that, to the shiny cover, and hey, look, sometimes you got to sell the sizzle too. So, Snake Oil Sean wants to know: are you affected by the diamond debacle? Thank you, Sean.
No, not at all. Because I am not taking part in the distribution chain for my small business of Northwind Adventures. I sell direct to customers, and I sell wholesale to retail shops, retail shops around the world, though, really, throughout America and in the UK and Europe. So because I don't take part in their business model, I am not caught in their scheme, in which they have basically screwed over all these small publishers.
Yeah, it is a shame what's going on. But the cracks were there a while ago. In fact, when they said like, "Oh, did you hear? Diamond is going bankrupt." I'm like, again? I'm like, I thought we went through this a couple years ago. I thought they were teetering on the edge. So, but I don't know what you do. Yeah, Chris Miller actually just kind of echoes what I was just saying. Love the art style you used. It exudes classic sword and sorcery. Well done. And I was about ready to pay the same compliment to you as I did like Shadow Dark and Dragon Slayer. It fits. Your style fits, and I'll tell you what, I'll bring it up here. I love this.
Yeah,
I love that.
Mick Fournette lives in the Michigan area. He's a great artist, and he's done some phenomenal work for me. He does a lot of line work that sometimes reminds me of like a Virgil Finlay or Bernie Wrightson. It's so much cross-hatching and detail. I mean, you can just stare at that one for so long and find some cool little things going on there.
That's kind of what I like. It might sound like criticism, but some of the art in the book, it's hard to it's line work, but it's kind of hard to read at first. But it's a good hard to read because there's so much going on, and you're like, you kind of have to be like, all right, I'm going to focus on this section here.
Right.
Oh shit, I didn't see that, and then you look at it, it kind of all kind of comes into view, kind of like one of those magic eye pictures, and you're like, damn, this is really good. There's quite a few pieces in there that have a lot going on.
We have a great diversity of different artists that have contributed to the game, and each one of them brings their own sort of unique flair. And each one, even though they're unique, they distinctly capture the Hyperborea flavor, I think, which is that sword and sorcery, weird science fantasy sort of look that we're trying to achieve and continue to work towards.
B5 fan, thank you so much. $50. Wow, that is very, very generous.
Very generous.
That adventure, the how do you say that, Jeff?
Anthropophagi
of Zambala is fantastic. We got 5 to 6 sessions out of it and launched our campaign from it. Nice.
Oh, very
Thanks,
nice.
Jeff. Yep, for all the adventure and sorcery you have given to the table. Thank you, and thank you for the
Nice.
for the money you have given me. Mucho gracias.
Yeah, very kind. I appreciate that. Supporting the good work that D&D is doing here.
Very good. Spin Gypsy. It looks like your world is a flat Earth. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Marvel Asgard model. Can you go over the edge, and where do you go if you do?
Well, I haven't exactly shown my hand at that, but what I will say is this: the flat Earth is sort of an idea I got inspired by reading the fiction of Clark Ashton Smith, specifically his Zothique works, that sort of functions off of a flat Earth type of model. And the idea is that at least in my Hyperborea game, is that the seas spill off to infinity, and how that water comes back up through underneath is a mysterious process. So I haven't exactly revealed, what's after that for at the edge of the world and what's underneath it. If the individual game referees want to create their own reasons or their own flip side of Hyperborea, what's on the other side of the flat Earth, I would encourage them to do so. You can create a whole nother world on that other side if you so chose to.
Love how you kind of out of the box kind of flesh out your world. I like the fact that like every God, what is it like once a month? It's like a complete. Is it like a year of darkness and a year of light? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So so Hyperborea, a true year for Hyperborea is actually 13 of our years, and so but they still account for years similarly to the way we do, because it was originally a part of Old Earth, and it is propelled at the edge of time, if you would, and at a time when our sun has expanded into a red giant, and it has absorbed all its inner satellites, including old Earth and Mars and Venus and Mercury. And so Hyperborea is now out there, this sort of anomaly out in space in the region of Saturn, revolving around the red giant sun in a 13-year cycle. And in that 13-year cycle, there is 1 year of complete darkness and 1 year of complete light. And the intervening years between that are the sort of growing to those things. As you get closer to the year of darkness, there's 5 minutes of less of light every week until you get to that time. So the winter lasts for a couple of years, summer lasts for a couple of years. And the natural life is sort of adapted to that in this fantastic world.
God, I love that, the way you describe it in the book. I actually didn't realize I kind of thought you were kind of like, well, it's kind of vague, where this is, but you're there, like that actually is Saturn there, like that is our sun. It's just
right.
Far in the far future, when it's turned into a red giant. That is cool.
Yeah.
Patrick Demo here for $5, our friend. Good to see you, Patrick. Man, game making a full-time gig. You are living the dream, sir. He's working hard to put out his own game. Any advice for someone aspiring to do what you do?
Well, I would say one of my first points of advice would be to really fulfill what you would like to do in a game. Don't try to meet the expectations of anyone else. Don't try to fill some preconceived hole in the role-playing game market because you think that you can, exploit some type of unexploited market. It will come across as fake. I think ultimately, what you need to do is follow I know it sounds corny and cliche, but you really need to follow your own passions of the things that you love doing, because it will come out in the work when you do so. And you start off small, and you get your friends involved. Maybe you get some other gaming groups that you know involved with supporting running games, and really boots on the ground type stuff. Run it at conventions. Show your enthusiasm for it. Wrangle a couple of your friends to run it at conventions for you, and before you know it, you get other people who, you know, if you're truly dedicated to doing it and you really feel passionate about the material and you know, the content of what you've created, then that will impact other people, and they will want to work with it and put, you know, put their own stamp on it, because ultimately, no matter what kind of game you run in role-playing games, it always ends up turning into creative collaboration. We all have our own interpretations of the content that we read and the content that we present to our friends or at a con or whatever. So ultimately, you know, you be you, you know, and just run with it.
Yep, and thank you very much. Crafty Matt is saying here he'd like to include, I guess it probably in my list of games to recommend. He likes DCC. Nothing wrong with that. Goodman needs to get his house in order. That's for sure. He needs to stop apologizing for everything. The game is right in my wheelhouse. Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's a solid game. If that wheelhouse is a wizard van flying through space, there you go. Chubby Funster, good to see you, sir. $5. Jeff, can you talk about how you run a Hyperborea tournament? I was ignorant about this myself until North Texas. I will be signing up next year. There you go.
Well, okay, so there, technically we kind of had two Hyperborea tournaments at North Texas this year. One was run by my buddy Tony Morita, in which he basically did a giant map with an arena, and the arena was drawn by one of the Hyperborea artists, Del Tigler. Fantastic artist. So Tony ran basically one of those types of arena games where the heroes are appearing in the arena, and it's basically last man standing to win the championship. And so there are different types of creatures that are appearing in the arena, and there are various hazards that appear that, you know, that the characters can run into. So it turns into one of those things where it's almost like a wrestling Royal Rumble, right? In which players might team up together for a bit, but then they might try to kill each other at some point, at some opportunity, because everybody wants to win, right? So we had that. And that was all Tony's brainchild. I don't know if I'm doing it justice by explaining it. Tony can explain it best. So then the thing that I ran on the Sunday of North Texas, and it was something that I ran last year as well, was a sort of open tournament in which we have a revolving cast of dungeon masters, or what we call referees in Hyperborea, a revolving cast of referees. And so basically I started off and start to run a dungeon for about an hour, and until the players reach a certain point, that it can be whatever point, in which I place a door, and that door opens up, and then the next referee sits down and starts to run. So we had a huge amount of players coming in and out, because it was Sunday of the con and people are starting to leave and they got to go catch a plane and stuff like that. So people drop in and drop out, or sometimes they just get killed, and so someone else sits down in the chair and takes a spot. So what we have is like a boardroom in which, you know, we have like 10 or 12 people playing it at once. And then as people are dying, other people who are standing there watching, they just jump in a seat and start playing. So it's kind of a fun, loose way of doing things, low commitment type of thing. I just told people, show up when you want and leave when you want.
That sounds like a ton of fun. See, DB here, our friend, Jeff, Double D, what's your favorite sword and sorcery character type, and why is it a two-fisted fighter type? There you go. Well, I'll be the contrarian here, DB. If you're going to run sort of a kind of Howard-esque, you know, Hyperborean game, I think every party needs a scumbag sorcerer in their midst. Somebody you're not sure, is this guy going to turn on us? Is he going to? Yeah, are we going to end up as a sacrifice to one of his gods? I think that always helps.
Sure. And it's funny because I thought you were about to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to go the way I was just thinking when you said scumbag and then you went into sorcery. I was thinking of the thief type, the stab you in the back. I'm gonna palm the gem so that the other characters don't see it happening. I've always loved those kinds of guys. I when I play, I tend to play either a thief or some type of sorcerer type character. I don't often play fighter types, but I do enjoy them. I mean, there's something to be said for playing a Viking berserker, which is something that you can do in Hyperborea. But in our game system, when you're playing a berserker, when you go into that berserk rage, when the battle is done, you have to roll a d8, and if you roll a 1 on that, you continue to attack the party. You're still in this feral rage, and you can't stop yourself.
Love that. Yeah, like you were talking about the thief type. Kind of brings me back to a video I did a while ago where I kind of maintain that Conan the Destroyer, not Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer is the best D&D movie ever made, and
because of the party, right?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's just everything. I mean, it has everything you would want in a classic D&D adventure. And I agree, Conan the Barbarian is a far better movie. But as far as D&D movies go, I mean, Conan the Destroyer is it, and a lot of the reason for that is Malik the Thief. I'm like, if you want like a textbook how to play a D&D thief, just watch him in that movie. It's like that's who you want. Thank you, DB, by the way.
I've always wanted to see the Gray Mouser portrayed in film. I don't think that any of that has ever been put to film, right?
I don't think so. And these days, you're always a little gun shy. How are they going to screw it up? You might want to bottle that up and save it for saner times until it can get the respectful treatment that it deserves. Something like Peter Jackson did with Lord of the Rings. They were, even if you don't like those movies, you can't deny that he was trying to be as respectful as possible to J.R. Tolkien.
Right. At least in those initial films, I was deeply disappointed with the Hobbit films.
Oh yeah. All bets are off after The Hobbit. Yeah, that was just a money making scheme. Saint Cimmerian for $4.99. I love that name. Jeff, thank you for making the best OSR game out there. And I agree. Worms of the Earth is the best sword and sorcery story. Also, Conan or Elric, who you got?
Okay, well, before I answer that question, I would agree that Worms of the Earth is actually my favorite Robert E. Howard story. So most people would think, doing what I do, that I would be choosing a Conan story, which a lot of the Conan stories are my favorites. Beyond the Black River is one of my all-time favorite stories.
Mine too.
But
mine too.
Worms of the Earth which is a Bran McMorn story. It's just so great because you have Howard at a point in his life where he was exchanging a lot of letters with H.P. Lovecraft by that time, and he was had become part of what they call the Lovecraft Circle, in which he was exchanging letters with these other writers of the pulp era. And so you can read in that Bran McMorn story those sort of darker cosmic horror elements that are taking place, but it also leans on Howard's unique perspective, in which he is enamored of real world history and sort of bending that into his fiction with his portrayal of the Romans and the Picts. And, Bran McMorn being this sort of tragic figure in his fiction, in which he's the last king of the Picts. So it's, and then you have the part in the story where in order for him to summon the worms of the earth to help him against the Romans, he has to sleep with this vile witch in her hut. And it's this, and it's presented in such a way that, you kind of can read between the lines that it's the kind of story that wouldn't have been published in other publications back then, but the pulps were seen as this sort of low, low class, morally depraved type of material that wasn't good for young men. But in fact, what it was doing was inspiring their imaginations, and Howard was just a master with that story.
I recently I reread. By the way, thank you, Saint Sumerian. I reread all the Conan stories, and I always get really his maturity as a writer kind of shows. I got the 3-volume set. It was cut up into 3 volumes
Yeah, yeah,
20 years ago. Great
right.
set.
Yeah,
Because
those are the most authentic versions that you can
yes,
get.
yeah, and it's like by the time you get to Beyond the Black River, which you mentioned, it's such a somber story, and Conan's not a huge. I mean, he's part of it, but he's not like the central focus
Right.
as he always is. And you have what's going on with the scout there, and just
Yep.
civilization, and kind of getting beaten back. It shows like such a maturity. That's why for years I always heard these intellectuals. Talk, just kind of dismiss Howard, like, oh yeah, well, that's good, if you just want to turn your brain off, and it's like, no, you don't understand.
Right.
There's something going on there, and
Those
it's
people are
entertaining
doing it.
too. Yeah.
They cast aspersions on something because they don't favor the genre, and it's actually incredible writing that flies off the pages. And Howard was just is such an incredibly gifted young man, because
yeah.
he was achieving this stuff. His stuff that he did in his early 20s was great, and it was exciting, but it fit a certain mold of an action story that when he was trying to emulate the types of authors that he was fond of. But like you mentioned, as he gets older and he's writing those other stories, the maturation process is just incredible to see what a writer he became. And it's sad to think, what kind of writer he might have become if he had continued. Some of the other stuff that he was doing later in his career was, the Francis Xavier Gordon Alborac stories, and those were great. They took place in adventure stories in the hills of Afghanistan.
Yep.
Um,
I even liked his boxing stories. I mean, he has
Yeah.
those, and like the Wild West. So those are entertaining too. He's just
right,
I mean, nobody could write action the way he does. I mean, I'm sorry, it's like some people, action is a good part of their story, but like he just something about the way he does it. He had
Right.
that intangible skill to just draw you in, and like you're there and you're feeling it, and like
Right.
this is all like in front of you.
Yeah.
And
And one
very
of the
few can
things
do
that
that.
a lot of people may not realize, but I'm sure in our audience here, a lot of people know this, is that he, besides being sort of like the father of sword and sorcery pulp fiction, he also invented the weird Western. That wasn't a thing to have weird horror in a Western story, and it became, and still is, its own sort of subgenre.
Absolutely, yeah. Deadlands can thank thank Robert E. Howard, them and everybody else. Jeff from
Sure.
Denkar for $5. What can you tell us about some of your earliest products and experiences of getting them out, and both good and bad? Working on my first products, and want to learn from the experience of creators like you. So,
Well, if I'm going back to my earliest stuff, when I was first getting published in the role-playing game industry, I was working freelance, so I was only worried about what I was writing. I wasn't worried about editing and layout and art and things of that nature. Um, I had the opportunity to work with Gary Gygax in the mid 2000s, from late 2005 until his passing in March of 2008. Which is one of the delights of my life, that I had that incredible opportunity, that I sort of lucked upon it. And so during that time, uh, what what I did was I was always writing, I was always taking notes, and I was always I wasn't afraid to, as I use the phrase, kill your darlings. Not be afraid to cut out something when you feel that it isn't working and go back to the drawing board at something. Even if you have a few pages of something that you feel like, oh, I was really, hitting this one out of the park. It's a great series of paragraphs here, but it doesn't fit what I'm trying to achieve here. Maybe put it on the shelf for another day, use it. So don't be afraid to kill your darlings is one of my points of advice when you're working on a project. I would say stay disciplined. Try to write every day, even if that writing isn't actual writing, if the writing is just taking notes on what you want to do next. One of the things I used to do early on when I first started writing was I would start off almost sort of journaling, in which I would write about the things that I wanted to write about. And you would be surprised when you take it from your head and you bring it to the screen or even a notebook. When you start to bring it to that sort of process, you can expand it in ways that you hadn't predicted when you were just thinking about it. It sort of grows on its own. It takes a life of its own. And I think I think that's part of the discipline of those initial steps that, having that daily momentum.
Yep. Salient advice. D&D Old Guard for $5. Hail Zathaqua. Is that how you pronounce that, right? Zathaqua?
Yeah, Aqua. Yeah.
Yeah.
However you want to say that. Yeah. So it's my alternative spelling of the Toad God, which was created by Clark Ashton Smith. But like I was talking about earlier, about how the different writers of the pulp era were exchanging ideas with each other. Interestingly, the first story that Smith wrote to feature the Toad God Zathaqua, he sent it to H.P. Lovecraft to check out, and Lovecraft loved it so much that he asked him if he could use it in his fiction as well. So Smith said, of course. And so Smith was still shopping for a publisher. Meanwhile, Lovecraft writes a story with Zathaqua, and it gets published. So a lot of people think that it was the creation of Lovecraft, but it was actually the creation of Clark Ashton Smith.
Is that who we're looking at behind the your iconic heroes here?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Figured I'd give him his moment in the spotlight there. All right. So Chance Dale for $5. I'll be running the Vanishing Isles of the Summer King at VengerCon this month. Lucky you. Hyperborea has some of the best modules around. Yeah, I saw that when I saw Jeff at Origins. It was like a cornucopia there. I kind of wanted to buy them all, but my wife would have killed me. Yeah. So any advice, he asks.
Okay, so that is a large adventure. When I ran it from my home group, I believe it took us about 12 sessions to run it. And each of those sessions was about 3 to 4 hours long, because my friends and I, we get together for 4 or 5 hours, but we talk a lot of shit to each other in between and bust each other's balls and things like that, and drink and just stupid stuff. But we game for about 3 or 4 of the hours that we get together. And so when I ran Vanishing Isles of the Summer King at conventions, what I would do is I would take a portion of it and run it. I would run it as almost a wilderness romp, because there are basically 3 islands to explore there. That adventure, by the way, was written and illustrated by Jonathan Bingham, who I've been working with on Hyperborea stuff since I want to say about 2011. So yeah, 14 years. John had done a lot of art for Hyperborea over the years, and he had been itching to write his own adventure. So he wrote this one, and it's a great one.
When did Hyperborea first come out, Jeff? What was the first edition?
So the first edition, we did a Kickstarter for it in 2011 and then released it in 2012. But up to that time, I actually published a couple of adventures for it in advance of the game system itself coming out. So the first adventure published for it was the Charnel Crypt of the Sightless Serpent, and we published that in 2010. And then we had another one called Taken from Dunwich. So both of those are out of print now. I do plan to put them back in print at some point. So anyway, getting back to his question. So you could either on the largest aisle turn it into a dungeon adventure for the dungeon that is underneath that aisle, and sort of put the characters right there and give them a little background adventure, description of how they got there. Or you can have them showing up at the first island on a boat and turn it into sort of a wilderness adventure that's on top of the islands, because there's so much to do on top of the islands before you even get to the massive dungeon that's underneath the largest of the islands. So there's really a few different ways that you can go about it, and it's however you feel comfortable doing it.
Our friend Mercurius gifts a membership. As always, thank you so much, Steady Eddie. Thanks all you guys for your generous super chats, channel memberships. Yes. Yeah, guys are killing it, and I don't even have Crazy Mouse here to wrangle it, so I think I am all caught up. You mentioned you worked with Gary on Castle Zagig, I believe.
Yes, sir.
What was it like? Any stories? I mean, just any general impressions about the man?
Yeah, he was great. So I worked with Gary at the end of his life, and I think that the headstrong co-creator of D&D, who had the world at his fingertips in the 80s, was a different man by the time that I worked with him. He was older and had experienced a lot in his life. He had experienced some extreme ups and some extreme downs. And so, but despite all that, he was a constant creator. He was a history buff. He had an incredible memory, an incredible way of rationalizing things. He taught me a lot about discipline in writing and organization in writing. Even the way he presented outlines for me, because a lot of what he was doing with me was presenting me with various outlines from which I was expected to flesh out. And as I fleshed them out, I would be giving them to him, and then he would come back at me and very directly tell me what was good and sucked, right? And so he never pulled punches, and I was when I first experienced it with him, I was of course scared. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's going to fire me, but that was never the case. He was just, he would tell me, you need to get rid of this, or you need to add more to this. I'd be like, oh God, why didn't I add more to that? But after a time, it didn't really matter. I just knew that was Gary, and that, so after, a year or so of that, it became more of like, I would argue with him at that point, and I would go back and forth with him on different things and explain my reasoning. And sometimes when I explained my reasoning, he would say, okay, and that would be it. And so, and it wasn't like that early on. Whenever he said something, I would just say, okay, I'll fix it. But it's almost like any type of mentor-student relationship when the student starts to develop more. So it was a real pleasure to work with him. And over time, it went from like a working relationship to us being buddies and talking about anything, and talking about fiction and film and different sports and stuff like that. Gary was a huge Chicago Bears fan, and me being from New England, I was a Patriots fan, and still am. And so he would always bust my chops about the '85 Bears. He used to send me pictures, of
That's right,
the Super Bowl shuffle and all that kind of stuff. And so, we had a lot of laughs. He was
the 46-10 drubbing. Yeah,
right. But we scored first.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I'm like, holy shit, this might be a game. And then
we only could have
drive
there.
Yeah.
But Gary was like the consummate punster. You would say something to him and he would come back and you wouldn't be sure if he was joking or serious about something at first. And then like he would come back with something else and you realize, oh, okay, he's going off on the punnery now. And so I would try to, shoot back with my own, responses, would try to create something as clever of a pun that he came up with. And eventually it would be me saying, no mas, you win, Gary.
Yeah.
But he was such a delightful guy to work for. I remember the first time I went to his house in 2006, and I remember pulling up, parking down the street, and walking up to his house, and he had already had a bunch of people over because we used to do this little convention called the Lake Geneva Gaming Convention, in which it was about 100 people at downtown Lake Geneva that would just get together and game, right? And so the first time that I went to Gary's house, there was a whole bunch of people on his porch already, drinking, barbecuing, stuff like that. So as my wife and I were walking up to his house, he comes walking down the stairs to greet us, and he holds out his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Gary Gygax." And I shook his hand and said, "I know you're Gary Gygax, but I'm Jeff Talanian. Nice to meet you." He's like, "Oh, Jeff, you're one of the guys that works for me." I'm like, "Yep."
Love it. Crafty Matt here has a question. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm not catching these. Like I said, I'm kind of listening with rapt attention to what Jeff's saying and keeping track of the super chats. So I'm sure a lot of these are getting by me. You'll just have to accept my mea culpa here. But I did catch this one from Crafty Matt. He just wants to know, are you still working with Levi Combs, and how's he doing? How's his health? He's a huge supporter of Levi.
Levi is doing well. He had an extensive surgery that took him, I think, longer to recover than he realized, and it took a lot out of him. And he has a great support network of his between his wife and his family and his friends, his lifelong friends, and his friends that he has through gaming, and his peers in publishing and whatnot. So he is working hard at getting back in the groove and starting to create again. And I know he plans to start going back to conventions again and start running games in the future. So things are looking good for him. It's just that he had a long time recovery. He literally had brain surgery, and it was a surgery that he had to get done because it was very dangerous for him. And so he did it, and he has fought through the highs and lows of that. And I'm happy to say he's doing well, and I speak with him often.
Good to hear. Yeah, that's nothing. Unfortunately, I had a very, very close family member who had to have brain surgery. It's never something you want to go through. Yeah. So Dark Knight of Hibernia for €5. Tim Kask in an interview said he ignored Gygax's puns so often that Gary just gave up and never punned Tim again for as long as
That's funny.
Yeah, it looks like our friend Wonky here. Good to see you here, Keelan. Looks like he said he spoke to him a little while ago, holding up all right. That's good. Yep.
Oh, and very nice.
Team of people helping him out. Yeah, there you go. So there's another update on the ground.
Excellent.
Yeah, and getting back to Gary, I always point this out. If you want to see the public, facing of kind of like his inner mind, like there's a huge thread that's been archived on EN World,
right,
back in that era when he was on the boards. And
yes,
just ask me Q&A with Gary Gygax, and it is
right. He did another one on Dragon's Foot as well.
Yep. Yeah, so you can literally, it's probably a couple days worth of just reading, if you just kind of do it leisurely. Just his thoughts on stuff, and you can kind of tell he's kind of mellowed out. People are trying to push the whole him versus artisan thing, and for the most part, he wasn't having it. He's like,
Right.
he's basically saying, I don't have anything against Dave. I do think he kind of bristled, because he would, of course, get the wise ass who's like, Dave invented the game, and you stole it. And I think I remember him bristling one time, and is like, look, it's one thing to have an idea, and it's a whole other thing to develop it and make it commercial and get it into the hands of people. So he's kind of a nice way saying like it does take both of us. So
Right.
but yeah,
that
when
makes
I
a lot of sense.
when I hear kind of the company line from Wizards of the Coast these days, it really does sadden me. How they treat the founder of their game. They'll pay him like lip service, and then they'll turn around and they'll put the whole ist phobe thing on him, and it's like, just let the poor guy. I mean, let him go. Don't
Right.
say
I don't like
anything.
that at all. I think it's so disrespectful.
I even asked Luke Gygax about it, and he said, "Look, Luke seemed like a nice guy, but I at Gen Con last year, I'm like, Luke, what do you think?" It was he was having the growing up Gygax, session. There was a lot of people there, and I got to ask him, I'm like, what do you think of these guys trashing your father? And he just kind of sloughed it off and was like, well, they're just a big company, they got to protect themselves. Not the answer I kind of wanted. I kind of wanted him to go like, it kind of makes me pissed off, but
yeah, I would call them a bunch of talentless hacks that could never created a thing in their lives, and so it's easy for them to walk on the grave of a man who can't defend himself against their ridiculous accusations and their own projections.
Yep, I couldn't have said it any better. It's been, as I say, there's no talent there now. There hasn't been much in the last several years, and probably about at least 10 years since there was any sort of appreciable talent there.
Right.
But boy, the cupboard's bare there, man. What do you think is going to be the future of D&D? I know you're probably just totally invested in just Hyperborea, but do you pay attention? Like, do you have any opinion as to what might happen?
Right. I mean, I'm so self-absorbed in what I do, so I would just be guessing that, and I probably don't have any more informed guess than you would, or anyone else in the audience. But I can say what I would like to happen. What I would make. So here's the thing: when you run a small game company like I'm doing, and like a lot of my peers in publishing do, that I see at different gaming conventions and who I interact with on the phone or online and all of that, it's my belief that D&D is the mountain, right? It's the main ship. And I don't want them to suck. I don't want them to fail. I don't want them to be these miserable jerks who want to spit on the grave of Gary Gygax. I don't want any of those things. I want them to kick ass. I want them to have cool stuff. I want them to be successful. I know that a lot of that in the current age comes with a lot of the sort of gimmicky, silly stuff that you'd see in stores, D&D coasters and plushies and things like that. I don't really care about that. Let them do all that stuff. But I want the content to be cool. I want people to enjoy it. I want it to create this positive vibe in which people are getting together, whether it's families or friends or a teacher running a game for kids after school. I want it to be this awesome creative collaboration that the game was created for. You have this game that was invented in which there isn't people playing against each other to have a winner or a loser. They're working towards a common goal and being creative to doing it and thinking outside the box and just doing all this cool stuff. And I don't want to see that D&D gone. I want to see it there again, and I don't know what it takes to get there.
Yeah, Dark Knight of Hyperborea rightfully says his ghost lives rent-free in their head. Absolutely. And to your point, I agree. Because a lot of people say, well, what are you going to do if they stop sucking? You're going to run out of things to talk about. No, I won't. I'll either talk about other things or I'll stop talking. And look, I love the channel. I love all that stuff, but a lot of things I can do in my life. This is my this is not my vocation. This is my avocation. And, even if I retire, I'm sure we can find other things to talk about than D&D sucking all the time. And it is kind of funny how they didn't learn the lesson. Like, the Stranger Things. We got this huge boost from Stranger Things. Well,
Right.
what kind of a vibe do you think Stranger Things was putting off about the D&D they showed there? Was it food festivals? Was was it all the kind of silly in-game stuff they promote now? Or was it just
Right.
old school, like going to a dungeon, you face Demogorgon, you kick his ass
Yeah.
and you take his stuff. Like that's
One of the funny things about Stranger Things is that I always felt that whenever D&D was portrayed in film, that they would always portray these sort of nerdy, tape between the glasses, gamer type stereotypes. And then they came, what was that kid's name that wore the battle jacket? Eddie? And he was
Eddie Munson. Yeah.
And I was like, finally, there's a DM that reminds me of my friends and I. We were playing because, we had long hair, listening to metal. And it's like, all right, this is the kind of, he was representing the kind of D&D player that, that I associated with.
Yeah, there was there was some of the geeks,
Sure.
obviously there was definitely some of that, but yeah, as we called it back then, the burnouts,
Right.
the dirt bags, if you will, back in our day.
Right.
Yeah, I mean they were just as apt to do that too, and the good thing about them is they didn't really care, because they didn't care what anybody thought. So
Exactly.
they play with all the nerds, and so it was definitely a moment in time that I sometimes wish we could go back to. It's hard to understand for people now to understand that weren't there, but God, it was. As I keep saying, time is just going so fast now, and it's like sometimes I feel like I can almost touch it. It's like it's almost there, and then you're like, no, you're old now. You are old.
Right. Right.
Craig Bragg for $10 Canadian. I love the setting. Great job. I'll use it for my Thundar inspired campaign. Yes.
I love it. Yes. Take from it what you will and make it your own, and just make cool shit.
Yep. Good to see you here, Patty. Great artist himself, along with Keelan, aka Wonky. I'm glad you mentioned Thundar because there's this this kind of member berries now going around about the D&D cartoon. It's like, I hate to break it to all of you, but the D&D cartoon in its day was a huge disappointment. Like everybody was kind of like, this kind of sucks. And he's like, well, just watch. It was Thundar, like you said. Everybody just kind of watched Thundar to get like a real D&D vibe.
Yes, because by the time the D&D cartoon came out, I was a little older. I want to say, did it come out in like 86, 85, 86? So by then
I think it was 83. I think it was 83, 84 maybe.
Okay. All right, then maybe I missed. But no matter how old I was at the time, I just remember thinking, this is a little silly. Why does that guy have a shield but not a sword?
I know that always bothered me. Like, was he just defend? Like that's all he does.
Right. And then there was Uni that annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But then there was some really cool stuff too. They had like that two-headed dragon thing that I think one side of it shot fire and the other shot lightning, and it was and it had some classic monsters that were presented, like the bullywug and stuff like that, and those were like really cool D&D elements that were in a cartoon that was like, holy crap, this is D&D on a show. But then on the other side of it was just so corny, No one hurt. It was almost like the G.I. Joe, like when the helicopter would get shot down and everyone would jump out in parachutes.
They're all alive. They're all alive. Yeah, I'm sure there was some a definite reason for that, a bit a network or business reason. But yeah, and of course you knew the voices too back then. You're like, oh, that's Donnie Most Happy Days.
Right. Ralph Mal.
Yeah. I much preferred, you talk about the villain, I much preferred the Thundar guy with, remember he had the two faces, it would like turn. I always loved it because his voice was the same guy as Fred Flintstone. So,
oh, really? I don't think I knew that. That's pretty awesome.
You listen to it, you're like, oh, that's Fred Flintstone's voice.
I'm going to have to listen for that. Oh, great. I love that.
Dark Knight again, hitting us €5. My last game had a dwarf fighter thief plans to steal a cult's magic item and get paid to give them a fake. Ooh, doing the old switcheroo. I'm about to bomb bandits to get it. You're gonna bomb bandits. All right.
All right. I like the spirit of adventure, Dark Knight of Hibernia.
I love let me say here, I love how you work. You must be a secret aficionado of the die 12 because I kind of caught how you kind of worked it into the cleric turning, the thief abilities. I'm like, this guy likes a good die 12.
Yes, sir. Caught.
Underappreciated.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
You know, you mentioned before because I think a lot of people say, and I guess there's a kernel of truth, like, oh, well, you know, Hyperborea along with Dragon Slayer. You could even, you know, throw Shadow Dark in here. They're all just kind of retro clones, you know, even though Shadow Dark's, you know, cloning something a lot, you know, closer to us. But I always kind of say, like, yeah, it's kind of simplistic. I mean, I think it's the character classes and especially the spells that you kind of add, you know, your own spells that kind of give it its distinct flavor. Are there any like good original spells you love from Hyperborea that you created?
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool spells that are in there. You know, we lean on a lot of the classics from AD&D, and it is a Vancian style magic system. But you know, there's some cool ones. One of my favorites was presented to me by my buddy Dan many years ago, and it's called the Forest of Bones. And basically, what it is it's similar to an entangle spell, but it's a necromantic spell in which all these bones and claws come up from under the earth and grab it, the victims. You know, we have a lot of different spells like that. It's just you know. A lot of different cool necromantic type spells, different types of dark spells. It's and it's, you know, so it's fun to I think it's fun to have those sort of classics. It's almost like so I went to music school when I was younger, and so one of the things we had to do was play jazz, what they would call jazz standards, like Take the A Train, Count Basie, Duke Ellington type stuff. And so what you would have with a classic number like Take the A Train is there would be like literally 50 different versions of it. And so I kind of look at some of those classic spells like Magic Missile and Sleep and Hold Person and stuff like that as true classics now at this point. That D&D has sort of become its own sort of mythology. And those classics are like standards that I just love to see in any gaming system. But then I'm not satisfied with those alone because I feel like, okay, we know what these are and we know what happens when they take effect. I like having the unknown as well. New types of spells that, you know, can surprise the you know, the jaded player that thinks he or she knows everything at this point.
Yeah, gelatinous. Chance Dale loves
Yeah,
gelatinous bones. Yeah,
yeah. It's a spell that bones just turn to jelly, and the person falls to the ground. So when it happens, they don't necessarily die. They'll just be this mass that can survive like a month or whatever the spell says it is, in this horrible state of just being a blob and having to be spoon fed. You know.
I think you went the right way. You do, if you want your game to be, because look, like it or not, we're sort of in a niche with, you know, the OSR. You know, it just is. You know, you will kind of hamstring yourself if you like kind of commit to the bit. You know, the pulp bit. And there's a game that did do that I really liked, but it was definitely just pretty much for the Conan game, and that was Mongoose's Conan back in the day. Their third edition, you know, where you had spells like draw forth the heart, you know, where a sorcerer can literally right out of the, you know, one of the Conan stories, like, you know, somebody's heart is going to explode out
like that, right?
Yeah. So, but you know, that's a serious commitment, and you know, when you play a sorcerer in that game, you are pretty much evil. I mean, you will end up, sacrificing. I'm sure first NPCs and then probably PCs
Right.
if you have to. So you kind of want like that to maybe a flavor of that to kind of be an option. But
Right.
also, you also want people to kind of have the familiar and be like, oh, okay, I want to go a little bit more kind of down the fairway here,
Sure.
with this game.
Yeah, and so I don't just draw inspiration from the type of pulp fiction that would only have that type of dark sorcery, which is basically what you would see in a lot of the Conan stories. That sorcery was always a dark magic. But if you read a lot of Clark Ashton Smith and also Fritz Leiber and Jack Vance, you'll find a lot of magic that's everyday magic and not necessarily wielded by nefarious types.
Yeah, definitely a good choice. Yeah, cover your bases there. Chris Miller, $5. Yeah, Call Organ should be a staple of every sword and sorcery game. LOL. Yep, there you go.
I mean, what is it? Is it basically a death save when you cast it? If you're pulling out
Yeah.
someone's organ.
You can, and essentially, you can just reskin something like Finger of Death and just be like,
Right.
all right, well,
Yeah.
just that's instead of Finger of Death, it's
Yeah.
give me your heart or your
True,
liver or
yeah.
lungs or whatever. So one thing I wanted to talk about, and I brought this up at Origins, and we briefly touched on it when we were talking off air at Origins, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Because at Origins, I was just, you're walking around, you're just kind of giving, stuff off the top of your head, being a little esoteric.
Sure.
But I was kind of like, I was kind of looking around and I'm like, look, are there people here who might not like me and my politics and all that stuff? Yes, I'm sure. But nobody's asking. And it just seems like it's just mostly people just there to game and have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was kind of telling them, I'm like, look, if you're a Roman Catholic missionary, are you sending people up to Florence, to Venice, to Sicily, or are you sending them to the Middle East or Africa or places like that? That's why I was very happy, to kind of see you there. And I think there's this, I think there's this view that maybe we need to rethink a little bit of, and that's just like, oh well, you can't go to that convention, that's the liberal convention, that's like you'll get attacked there or something. And I understand some stuff has happened, like we're thinking of course about the quartering, what happened to Jeremy Hambly in 2017 and all that, but
I don't know
like
that.
he's just a YouTuber, conservative who used to go, and he got sucker punched by some guy, and
Oh yes, I remember vaguely. Yeah.
yeah, and then Gen Con actually ended up like kicking him out. It was an ugly thing. And I mean, of course, I'm never going to defend that sort of response. But in the same respect, if you're just there to sell stuff and game and all that stuff, just don't feel like you have to not go because somebody told a YouTuber or one of your friends told you that. If you want to go because you said, well, do you want to tell them what you said about how trying to sell stuff to fans of yours who are already fans of yours versus Origins?
Yeah, so I found Origins to be a great experience for me. It was one of the larger conventions that I've done, in addition to PAX Unplugged. But one of the things that I found really cool about it was that it was the first time in a long time that I found myself, describing the game to someone who had never heard of it before. And not just doing that once, but like over and over all day, each day of the con. So it showed in a lot of those people, just hearing what I had to say, either bought the game or took my card, and sales on my web page while I was away at Origins were great. And I attribute that to maybe people who didn't want to walk around with 5 pounds of books in their hands. So they just decided I'll just order it online. So I thought it was great because it showed to me that, at least for my game, and I think it speaks probably for a lot of the other small press publishers as well, that you don't have a finite audience per se. That there, if you get out there and you you're passionate about what you're doing and you make a good presentation of it, and you can at least decently articulate what it is to someone who just wants to know what it is, you'll find that there is this chance for a growing audience of people who are like of mind. There were at least like 3 or 4 occasions where these guys said to me after I described the game that this is the game I've been looking for my whole life. I've been looking for an old school vibe game that is strong sword and sorcery, savage sort of Conan, Lovecraftian elements, all those things. They're like, one of the guys told me that it's the game that he's been running already for his friends for years, and to see something like it published blew his mind. So I just think that, yeah, to your point, you can go into an environment like an Origins in which there are all these different stripes of people, young and old, and from all the spectrum of the gaming sphere. And you can find so many people who are like of mind that you maybe would have never encountered before.
Yeah, and they found you because you were there. I mean, because you planted your flag and said, "I'm going to let my work stand on its own," and it certainly did. These are very eye-catching books, by the way. It was a good. The color scheme was a very, very good move. I love that orange and dark feel, of the covers on it. It jumps off of like a table, or I'm sure when you're selling it, people like do a double take, like, "Ooh, what's that?"
Yeah, those covers are both painted by Charles Lang, who is he is an artist out of Salem, Mass, who mostly does horror art. He he's done a lot of like magazine covers and paperback book covers and things like that. Just an incredible painter with an incredible imagination.
Yeah, just I love him. Yeah. So
I actually met him going back to earlier in our conversation. So his wife was a comic book artist / writer, and she had a vampire comic. And when I had my comic book store in the early '90s, they popped into my store, and we sort of developed this friendship. So they would come by to the store, and then I had them do some signing there and stuff like that. And one of the times they did one of the signings, I bought a painting off Charles, and that painting I kept in my office for years. And that painting, I would look at it and imagine, say, this painting is the game that I would want to make, and that became the cover of my first edition of the Hyperborea game.
Oh man, I love it. Inspirational. All right, looks like we got you another sale here, Jeff. Craig Bragg,
Oh, thank you very much, Craig.
$5
I appreciate that.
Canadian. Yeah, just ordered the bundle, Jeff. Thanks for bringing him on, Double D. My pleasure. Like I said, it was.
Thanks for having me.
And like I said, this doesn't happen unless I go to Origins, and I'm just there, kind of enjoying it with my daughter. Yeah, we don't meet. So, good. And I'm not saying like I know probably the best gaming happens at small conventions, like VentureCon, North Texas, Central New York, the great game, probably, much better gaming, just because you're getting the real serious gamers there. But look, just sometimes it's fun to just kind of go and just kind of walk the halls. Yes, do a little gaming. You can do some board gaming.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, don't ever let somebody tell you can't do something or go somewhere because oh, that's woke or whatever. I mean, look, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. To this day, I've never been hassled or anything like that. I don't try to advertise, anything, political while I'm there. I'm just there to game, and I think most of the people that are there, are the same way, even if we might disagree.
Sure.
So that's all we want, right? We just want to come together
Right. I mean, gaming is supposed to be this nice little escape in life in which we put aside the realities of the things that we have between, you know, your home repairs and your 9 to 5 job, or your kids having trouble in school, or any of the things you can be going through in life, right? You can have a sick child, you can have an elderly parent that you take care of, or have to oversee, and there's so many different things that can go on in people's lives, and yet that small space to get together with friends or even strangers at a con and have some gaming is a nice way to sort of recharge your batteries for life, I think.
At Central New York, I ran scenario I just made up in Greg's system, Dragon Slayer, and I mean, look, there's girl showed up, nose piercing, pink hair, and I'm like, all right, whatever, She ended up being cool. She took this. I was hoping somebody would take like the sorceress, and that's the first one. She picked it up. Yep, I'm the sorceress.
All right.
And she played her perfectly, and I'm like, yes. So yeah, maybe don't judge a book, by its cover.
Exactly.
Yep. And Edgelord here, $2. Just want to say hi, Jeff. Hyperborea is his #1 game in setting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Go. Yeah, nice. Looks like we might have a couple others here. Agile Monk, $4.99. Jeff, I have 3.0. What is your latest version, and what is your future plans? Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Is what does the future of Hyperborea look like?
So I am getting to a point where we're almost sold out of this printing that we have of 3rd edition. We're not doing a 4th edition. We're just reprinting the books. But doing that has created a document that's about 2 pages long for each of the books that has any little corrections and typos, so that if people want to pencil them into their current books, they can do that, or if they want to buy the new printings, they can do that. But it's the same game. There's nothing changing. So as far as the game goes, that's the future of the game right now, because we're almost out of books, which is a nice problem to have. We published 3rd edition in 2022, and so we're almost out now, and 3 years later. So just moving forward with that, same printer, same covers, all that kind of stuff. Everything will be basically the same, just some corrections of things and a few little clarifications of things that may have been worded a little awkwardly and stuff like that. A few little repairs here and there. But anyway, the big that I'm working on right now is the city-state of Cromarium, which is a large city-based project. And I'm having so much fun with it, because it actually takes me back to 20 years ago when I was working for Gary Gygax, because my first gig for Gary was working on the city of Iggsburg. And I was developing various neighborhoods in this city that he made up that was placed next to Castle Greyhawk, or Castle Zagging, with the serial numbers filed off.
Right.
And so I'm working on my own massive city, and it is the largest city of Hyperborea, so it has all the races represented. It's sort of a melting pot city, and it's ruled by this oligarchy, and the temples of all the different gods are present in this city. And it has guilds, it has different controversies going on, it has an arena, it has all different kinds of things going on in it. So it will be a sort of combination of set piece locations that the players can interact with, and also a spread of different little seeds that individual referees can build on to sort of create campaign fodder. So it's going to be nice. It's going to function as a sort of resource and adventure material at the same time. It's really probably the most ambitious project that I've tackled personally as a writer since I wrote the game itself back in 2010 and 11.
As a consumer, a potential future customer, not potential, I will get it. Let me already tell you the most important thing that's going to be in that release is the map.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the map, because I'm huge into the old city-state of the Invincible Overlord, the World Emperor, and those are adorning this table right next to me. I have them under plexiglass. I even went up to Staples. I'm like, blow up this map to 4 by 6 or whatever. It's just huge. So the
Those are
if
both
you,
part of my research materials and my stack of stuff that's researched that is a combination. So my research for this city is a combination of gaming publications of cities that I have loved over the years. One of my favorites, besides the ones that you just mentioned, being the original AD&D Lankmar. I loved that. But also not just backward thinking into what our other gaming publications have done, but doing a lot of history reading and looking at different cities throughout the Middle Ages into the Renaissance, and seeing the different development of different economies and things like that, how everything worked. So studying real stuff, and then also looking at some of my favorite fictional cities right out of different books. So just compiling all these notes to sort of in its rough form, hewing away at it until you have a sculpture finally.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. That is going to kick some major ass. I do declare. Game King for $5. What's the best way to get wholesale orders? There you go.
Well, the best way to get it is first you have to be a retailer. So I've had some folks try to fake me out that they're a retailer when all they're looking to do is buy some books for their gaming group. So you're able to prove that you're a retailer in the first place. And once we establish that connection, basically just reach out to me. I have a contact page that you can reach out to me on at www.hyperborea.tv. And you can reach out to me that way, and I'll let you know all the details.
Our friend DB for $2. Are the modules compatible with second edition?
Oh, all of our modules are backwards compatible. Our changes to rules have been very minor over the years. Very slight adjustments. There's not a single module that we have published that isn't compatible with any version of the game. It's kind of a funny topic, right? When you talk about printings versus editions, right? So I've run into this whole thing. I know that the Castles and Crusades guys, they like to just call them printings. And they've avoided over the years the whole edition thing, because this kind of question is exactly what I run into sometimes. So for me, I look at a new printing as it's the same thing. You're printing it again.
Yeah.
But in each of my, what I call editions of the game, I've added more spells, more magic items, more monsters, clarified things, made little tweaks to things that were clearly wrong in some way. If it kept coming up, if I got multiple emails over the years asking the same question about the same spell, it kind of tells you that you're doing something wrong in the way you've portrayed it in the game. Maybe it's mechanics or it's color description or whatever, that people clearly aren't getting it, and that you messed up in some way that needs to be repaired, right? So all of those things, to me, when you add all those different elements, the spells, the items, the monsters, all that stuff, you're not reprinting it anymore. To me, it's another edition. But what happens to us as gamers, when we hear edition, we think, oh, great, another edition. So everything that I have is obsolete now, because obsolescence is a big thing, especially in the video game world. Obsolescence is like a thing that really pisses off a lot of people, that they support these games and then they become dead games. And after they've supported them for so many years. So there's no obsolescence with the modules that I've published. It's all backwards compatible. Sorry for such a long-winded answer and a simple question.
It's good to clarify. There you go, DB. Looks like he's happy. So yeah, and look, we all know the ecosystem we're in here. Like, if you most of this audience, let's just say, is they're seasoned men like we are. You can do the corrections on the fly, even even if something was off a little bit.
Right.
So, and kind of going into that, I don't know if you saw, but I did a video recently just about THACO, and just how it's
yes,
it's not that confusing, and
right.
it is kind of interesting because you kind of hear it from both sides. You know, you got people who are like, well, duh, it was never hard. You know, people who can't figure it out, you know, they're dummies. And I, look, my intent is not to, you know, open up the hobby to lunatics. Okay, my intent is you know that maybe there's people kind of who get our vibe, who are on the same side of the fence, sort of, you know, at least from like a sword and sorcery feel. Maybe they're just like, Thaco, it's a bridge too far, and it's just because of the reputation. So that's all I was kind of doing with that sort of, you know, math hack, which, you know, we all know, you know, because you
Right.
know we all kind of understood it growing up. Would you ever
Right.
would you ever consider putting that into a future version of Hyperborea, or are you kind of committed to like, look, I want to keep this as genuine as possible. I want to keep it
I don't
real.
know. I don't want to say that anything is impossible. I don't like to like you know. I don't want to sound non-committal either, but I have no intention of doing so still at this point. And I mean, I started writing this game in August of 2008, right after Gen Con, after Gary had passed away in March, and I found out that I was no longer going to be working on any of his projects, and I decided, screw it all, I'm going to write my own game, and I wanted Descending AC, and you know it's funny because we talk a lot about Thaco because Thaco became a big thing with second edition, but growing
Yes.
first edition, we didn't have that terminology really, and it just wasn't a big thing because we were using combat matrices, which is the kind of Thaco that I embrace. By you know, every character sheet has a little graph at the bottom, which you show what it takes to hit from armor classes. At least in Hyperborea, the worst armor class is 9, and the best armor class is -9. And so everything it takes to hit each of those armor classes. So I, one of the things that I've always liked about the classic descending armor class system is its nice little finite range. Now, granted, as my buddy Dennis pointed out to me when we were having a conversation about it a few weeks ago, you you could create a finite range for ascending AC if you wanted to. But the impression that ascending AC gave me in the early years of third edition, which we did try in my group for a little while and before we, you know, tossed it in the garbage. What you find is this sort of absurdity in which you have these, you know, modifiers that, you know, because of my character's abilities, because of my character's feats, and because of the synergies that are created between these abilities and feats, these skills and feats, I am at now plus 18 to hit. But oh crap, I'm trying to hit an AC of 35.
Yeah.
So it's just
it's inflation.
You're just adding and adding more and more to it. And it's
Yeah.
but you're still rolling a D20. And so I don't know. I suppose it just I would be lying if I said that I'm doing it for mathematical purposes and there's no nostalgia involved. I am a creature of my upbringing.
For
And
sure.
things that I enjoyed as a youth. I have the opportunity to do things the way I like to do them because I'm running my own small press company. So I don't have a boss to tell me, well, you need to do this too. I don't need to do anything. I can do whatever I want. So I like it that way.
Oh yeah.
Or also add an ascending AC along with it or something. I don't know, maybe, but I just
Yeah, and to be clear, I wasn't saying add, like, you know, change everything up. I was just saying give a little nod towards that hack. You know, you still do the same system. Oh, and by the way, here's a little formula. Here's like a little formula for those of you guys that are maybe used to playing modern games. You know, you can just do the same thing.
That would be a more reasonable thing to me because I thought what you were implying was I think it's Swords and Wizardry which I love, by the way, and I love Matt Finch's work, but I think Swords and Wizardry puts a parenthetical for ascending AC next to the descending
Yeah,
AC.
right. Yeah, I think Old School Essentials does the same thing too. Yeah. So yeah, no, I wasn't saying change who you are. I mean, I understand you're old school to the bone, but I just didn't know if that was ever in the cards. And
As
no
a
big
little
deal.
table, I mean, or as a little sidebar, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gives less of a line of attack. I always thought to people, but obviously,
Yeah,
you
that
will.
makes a lot of sense. Maybe I'll steal that from you someday.
Yeah. Well, make sure to credit me, Jeff.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, Edgelord, $2. The classes in the game are something for everyone. Absolutely, yeah. The classes, because there's the 4 main classes. You kind of almost leaned into kind of the way second edition D&D did it, where there was just the 4 main classes, and then there was kind of like the subclasses under them. And there is one for everybody. It's a really cool. I was kind of reading like the cataphract and like the necromancer and all that stuff. It's unique stuff that you don't see in every game.
Right.
Every
I like to
retro
think
game.
so. I like to think that it gives players the opportunity to try something that has some familiarity to them, but also is something different than what they've played before. And like I said, it's that sort of archetypal type of play in which you are, as you're advancing in levels of experience, you're gaining these new abilities that are specific to that class. Is there some overlap with other classes? Sure. There are several classes that have, say, a climbing ability, or several thief subclasses that probably almost all have a move silent ability. But maybe not all thief classes have what the core thief has, in which they can do like reading scrolls and things like that. Some of that old school stuff that thieves could do.
I would I can't wait to just kind of try this, even if it's just like a convention game or just maybe like a one shot for like the normal group. Just to kind of get this on the table and just do like a classic, kind of like Conan tale, Conan-esque, I should say.
Yep.
It's I'm
26
really
classes is correct to Steve K there. So it's the 4 core classes and then 22 subclasses.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, something for everybody, for sure. DB hitting us again for 5. Thank you, my friend. Just ordered the Mystery at Port Greeley and the.
You gotta say it this time.
It's a version of Kambala. Yeah. Go ahead, say it the right way.
The anthropophagi of Zambala. It's a Greek word. It means man-eater in Greek.
Pophagi. I'm a pophagi. Anthropophagi. Yeah, it is a great
in the morning.
By the way, right there.
Very nice.
Get some.
Yes. So that is a cover that was drawn by Val Simex, and so I'll tell you how I found Val Simex. Like I've mentioned a few times in our little chat tonight, I always was a big Savage Sword of Conan and Conan the Barbarian fan from Marvel Comics. And at one point, about 10 years ago, I was looking through some of my old Conan issues, and I was looking at this one period in which it had this artist that decided to take Conan out of the loincloth and give him all these types of armor that I thought were more accurate to how, even though I loved Ernie Chan and John Buscema and those guys and Barry Smith, loved all those artists. But this guy, whoever he was portraying Conan with all this great armor and different weaponry. I'm like, this is so fucking cool. So I'm like, Val Simex, I wonder who he is and where he is. So I looked him up and I found he had a website, and I found on his website he had a contact page, and I found on the contact page it said that he was accepting commissions. So I reached out to him, and he replied to me, and it turned out that he was retired from the comics biz, the daily grind of churning out pages and pages of books. He had done Avengers, Justice League. He's most famous for doing The Demon and Lobo. Those were the 2 books that he did a lot of work for back in the day.
One of my co-hosts, Rogan, he's a huge Lobo fan. Yeah.
Yes, Val drew a lot of Lobo. So So Val was delighted to start working on some stuff with me and doing different sword and sorcery type stuff, because he said his years of drawing Conan and in Savage Sword of Conan, which he did a Cull story that was a backup story in Savage Sword. That was his favorite stuff to draw, and it still is. And so he's retired, and but he still does the occasional piece for me, and he's just such a pleasure to work with. He's probably a lot closer to you than he is to me. He's somewhere in upstate New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I tell you, having a good artist in your bullpen, just so important. Like it or not, these games sometimes sink or swim based on their look, their feel. We talked about Shadow Dark, Dragon Slayer. It's clear you also didn't skimp on the art for your books and your adventures, but it's worth it because, look, nobody. It's very rare, to find the person who opens up like an adventure or a book and is like, "Oh yeah, this is just what I want to see—a wall of text." Yes, just give me the what I need. None of that silly imagination stuff. Everybody wants to see what the feel is like. What does it look like? What can I show my players? All right, guys, here's what you see. And you want that to be like a real banger. So it is important to like spend a little on art.
Yeah. And I like veering off into some of the really weird styles too, because they offer a different glimpse at Hyperborea through a different lens than what you might expect. And so when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of Peter Mullen. Peter Mullen has done some fantastic art for Hyperborea. And he has this weird sort of Errol Otis, Dr. Seuss, strange vibe that's all his own. He's an art professor at Penn State.
Nice. Penn State main campus, right? State College.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah, he's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I went to Crazy Mouse and I attended a branch campus of Pennsylvania, where we are located. So we are, but they don't distinguish, Jeff. We're still Penn State. Well, at least I think I graduated. I don't think Crazy Mouse did. We are Penn State alumni, or I am. Have you considered, oh boy, hiring Condor for layout? That's an inside joke there. It's a fellow YouTuber who kind of released his own book, and good on him for doing that. He just didn't do much in the layout department. Let's just say that it was pretty much a word document. Thank you, Edgelord. Yes. I know this is something I wanted to hit you with before we let you go, because I know we talked about it. It's been a great conversation, by the way. You were a great guest. Yeah, so I'd love to have you back sometime. I'd love to get you and Greg together. Got to get you and Greg on the same. I'll just sit back and listen to you guys talk, wrangle. But I came home. I think it was on the 4th of July. I had gone over to a buddy's house. We're playing a game, and I came back, and my wife's like, I'm watching this movie. And it was a sword and sorcery movie from the 80s I had never seen before. It was called Hundra. It's a female Conan Red Sonja ripoff. But it was so cheesy and fun from Amazon. What are some of your favorite sword? And obviously we know we'd probably all say Conan, the Barbarian, obviously classic. But are there any second tier movies you kind of fell in love with when you were a young lad like me?
I mentioned Beastmaster. That was a favorite.
Oh yeah.
Of course, I think I also mentioned Krull.
Oh yeah. Sword and the Sorcerer.
Sorcerer, Deathstalker.
Deathstalker, yeah. They made so many sequels to that. They did not get better.
It's not really sword and sorcery, of course. It's horror, but one of my favorite things is I love old Hammer horror films. I love
Christopher
Lee, and and of course, all the actors of that time.
Peter Cushing, yeah.
Cushing, he was incredible.
I love that they had their own little stable, because you'd see the same guys show up, and all the bit players, all the B and C tier actors. It's the
Right.
same guys, just in different makeup.
Right.
I'm the Undertaker in this one. Here I'm the innkeeper.
Right, because they would play different roles, but it's the same guys.
Oh, yeah. Same guy, yeah. The one guy's name was Michael Ripper. If you look him up, you'd recognize him instantly, Michael Ripper. But I was actually gonna bring up Hammer when we kicked it off, because you were talking about starting small. Starting your adventure small. That way you're not putting a lot of undue pressure on yourself, and you're having like the points of interest around the home base. And then I was about to bring up, you could always have something interesting visit you, and the one thing I was going to allude to was Vampire Circus, a fantastic Hammer horror movie from, I think, 1970.
Oh yeah.
They had David Prowse in it, the guy who was in the Darth Vader suit.
Darth Vader,
Yeah, just a fantastic movie where this kind of circus comes into town, and they're not there to strictly entertain, and there's of course a vampire behind it all, but great fun. Yeah, a lot of stuff to draw inspiration from in those
One of the
old
coolest
Hammer.
things that I've thought about too is like, and it does tie into my setting. How we talked about, you have the Year of Darkness in my setting. I was thinking about the more modern vampire movie, the 30 Days of Night, in which the vampires just descend upon an Alaskan town that doesn't have a sunrise for a month, and it just seems like it's a great feasting place for vampires to go. They have no weakness basically for this whole time.
Like you said, for your setting, that would be perfect for the Year of Darkness.
Right.
Year of the Vampire.
Right.
Badger's coming in strong with Hawk the Slayer. Yes,
of course. Yeah, how could I forget it? Yeah, Hawk the Slayer is a classic. Love it.
Cheesy greatness, man.
Oh yeah. So good.
Yeah. I was rewatching Lady Hawk the other day. I hadn't seen it in quite a while, and I'm like, it's a pretty good movie. I mean,
it's not bad. It's not bad. And they have another good thief-like character, right?
Yeah.
What's his face played Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, Matthew Broderick. I kind of, because Crazy Mouse is the resident thief, my co-host who's in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. He's the resident thief in our games. All his characters, he loves playing thieves. And nothing wrong with that, of course. But I kind of asked him, I'm like, have you ever seen Lady Hawk? Because sometimes some of his thieves are a little younger. And I'm like, man, I'm like, I think you would identify with Matthew Broderick's character in that movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little corny, but it's fun.
Yeah, I love the whole curse thing. It's simple, it's accessible. Yeah, of course it has Rutger Hauer. I mean,
you can't go wrong with him.
Yeah,
how do you
go wrong?
A lot of flack is the musical score. It's all those 80s.
Yeah, it's like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I think I thought
it was cool though. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, the synth music.
Oh, Captain Kronos. There you go. There's a great Hammer horror film.
Yeah, Carolyn Monroe. I can never go wrong. Put her in a movie. Yeah,
my faves.
Yeah. That was a late Hammer one. In fact, I think they wanted to do a series of those.
That's right, and it never came to fruition.
I think the genre was kind of on its last legs. It was kind of like that. It was kind of weird because that and the spaghetti western had similar timelines. They kind of ascended at the same time, and they kind of fell at the same time too. That's why you'll find some spaghetti westerns, in like the early 70s through the mid 70s, but you can kind of tell it's getting a little long in the tooth. And same with those Hammer vampire movies. They had kind of known that they had kind of plumbed those depths. But that is an exception. That is actually a pretty good movie, Captain Kronos. Yeah, I love that one.
And then Carolyn Monroe, did she go on to become a Bond girl?
Yes. Yeah. In The Spy Who Loved Me, she was the helicopter pilot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And she was in the modern Christopher Lee Dracula. What was it called?
Dracula AD.
Yes, yeah, yeah. She was one of the girls in Dracula
Yeah.
AD. I would watch her do anything. So,
Right.
do
Yeah.
you want to hear a little story about Carolyn? I have a I have a buddy. I have a buddy. By the way, thank you, Chris. Captain Kronos, good pull. I have a buddy who's a huge movie aficionado, and he goes to all these horror movie conventions. Him and one of his buddies too, and they saw Carolyn Monroe there, and she was very very much hitting on
No way.
my friend's friend, and my friend's his friend kind of had to politely decline. I mean, look, it's something to brag about, but you're not getting the Carolyn Monroe from 1970. You're getting the Carolyn Monroe from 2019 or whenever this happened. She's little older, a little more matronly. But yeah, he swore. He wasn't bragging. He was kind of like, I think she was hitting on me. I think she was implying something. So still love her. Also in the Adamant video, Goody Two Shoes. She was the woman in Goody Two Shoes. So yes, Lord still would. Yeah, I'm a married man. No comment. There. Well, I tell you what. Is there anything you can give us? If you don't have anything else, you were kind of dying to talk about. You can just kind of give us the elevator pitch for Hyperborea, and I'll also remind people that the link to your store is in the in the description of this video. So is there anything you wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't, or do you just kind of want to give the old pitch
No, I
for
think
Hyperborea?
the thing that we just recently did was 3 new adventure modules, and one of them was brought up already, the Vanishing Isles of the Summer King. That's a very recent release for us, as well as the Thousand Isles of Thaumagoria, which was written by Ben Ball. Ben has done a lot of fantastic work for Hyperborea over the years. One of the modules that he wrote some years ago called Beneath the Comet is really popular. And so Thousand Eyes of Thaumagoria is another great one. It's about an orc-infested forest that has very Robert E. Howard strong vibes to it. And then we have another one that was written by my my good friend Joe Mack, which is called The Oblation Slab of the Hepatomancer. So it's
Love it. Love it.
So a hepatomancer is a sort of sorcerer who would cut open a beast or even a man and draw out the entrails and be able to divine some type of future from it, or be able to see, so it's this vile type of sorcery they conducted. I'm actually wearing the shirt of the cover of it right now, which is
there you go,
painted by Del Tigler. It actually this cover was inspired by Frank Frazetta painting. So
can they get T-shirts on your site?
Yeah, it's kind of hit or miss though, because when I do a run of T-shirts, I usually do pre-order on them, so the people who want them will get them, and then I order a bunch extra after that. So the T-shirts that I have in stock right now are sort of a mixed bag of various sizes of each of the shirts that some of the sizes are sold out and some are not.
Gotcha.
So anyway, the Oblation Slab of the Hepatomancer, that's enough. So we had those 3 new adventure modules. And so that's what we most recently did. And so the other thing that I talked about already is the city project that I'm working on, the city-state of Cromarium. So that's going to be the next big project. And so I guess, I don't think that there's anybody here that's that doesn't know about the game, but in case there is, or in case somebody watches this after, the quick little elevator pitch of this game would be that it is an old school style game that is inspired by the fiction of Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, and H.P. Lovecraft for its fictional influences, with mechanics inspired by Gygax and Arneson. And then it has a lot of its own wrinkles to its own little innovations of mechanics and whatnot. So it's not a pure retro clone, like it doesn't specifically clone AD&D or I have or one of my biggest other influences was the Holmes Basic set that we talked about earlier. So it's sort of this merging of setting, fictional influences merged with the game mechanics of Gygax and Arneson. And the biggest selling point of the game that I like to say is that the Hyperborea game is not some generic set of rules. Not that that's bad, but it's not a generic set of rules that you can just apply to anything. It's specifically built for the setting. So the classes, a lot of the spells, the monsters, they all sort of tie in with the setting of Hyperborea. So it's a very pulp themed setting. It's not trying to be this multi-tool thing in which you can do anything with it. It is specifically sort of built to evoke that type of feeling that the pulps were creating back in the like the 1930s, but layered in with that sort of Gygaxian sort of flair to it, right? So that's kind of what Hyperborea is.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna you're not going to want to recreate epic fantasy like Tolkien in this. There's really no way to do it. There's better games to do that. We talk about Dragon Slayer. Greg's game would be perfect for that.
Yes.
This is definitely definitely has a tone and an edge, but it's one that let's be honest, we all understand and know. And there is certain things you can cut out if you want. If you don't like the super science and you just want to keep it sword and sorcery, that's perfect. Or if you want to amp up the super science, I'm sure you can do that.
Right.
But generally, yeah, we're talking pulp. I mean, one word, Hyperborea. This is pulp.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I loved growing up was the expedition to Berea Peaks, when you had like a giant flying saucer that crashed into these mountains.
Yes.
And it turns into like a dungeon that you explore.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always thought that was fascinating. So when people come up to me today and say, "Oh, there's a spaceship on the cover of your book," that's not D&D. And I think, what D&D are you talking about right now? Not the D&D that I know.
And I'm glad you said that, because I remember I was always fascinated too when I had heard about that. They're like, yeah, there's this adventure, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. There's a spaceship in it. I'm like, spaceship? I'm like, we're talking D&D. This is me, 12-year-old me in 1982 or whatever. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, there's a spaceship in it, and I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, boy, I'm missing the boat here. And then then when you see it, it had all those like glorious color drawings of everything that's going on. Got these D&D fighters with like ray pistols. Let's see, oh boy, Edgelord. All right, brace yourself here, Jeff. I have to please the crowd here. If I can. Oh, here we go.
Like, you've got ogres. Like, you've got ogres.
There you go. Happy now? Happy? Happy now?
No comment.
I think we need to get a beer sometime when we're at the same convention. I think we'd have a very there you go. Yeah.
Cheers,
I think we'd have a very interesting conversation. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Edgelord. Thanks everybody. Stay tuned, because we'll talk a little bit about Mad Scribe magazine, some other stuff coming up. Give me let me do this here. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard giving out 5 Diversity and Dragon memberships. Thank you very, very much, sir. Think I got everything. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Any questions? No. Going. And gone. Yep, I think we're caught up. So I'm gonna let you go now, Jeff. Thank you for sticking around so long. That was great conversation.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch. You have my number. I have yours. We can communicate on Twitter too. And definitely when you're ready to release that city state, we'll at least have you on then, if not before.
Sure, that sounds great.
Promote the hell out of that thing. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. Yep. Take care. Have a great night. We will talk soon, buddy.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Peace. All right. There you go. Good dude. I knew he would be. Knew he would be a good guy. Definitely one of us, that's for sure. He is old school to the bone. I'm a little ashamed of myself that it took me so long to kind of like get into this. Like I said, I love it. I still love Dragon Slayer, of course. I think, like I said, these are they scratch different itches. Greg's game is just pure like old school dungeon crawling. You can kind of do the classic gaming with elves, dwarves, all that stuff. I still think Dwaro Deep is probably the best adventure written. But if you're in the mood for like pulp fantasy, whew, man, that's good stuff. So yeah, highly recommend it. You saw what kind of a guy he is. Obviously, I know some of you guys already bought and super chatted, telling me thank you guys so much. You make me look good when you do that. So yeah, let's give him a little boost here. But looky here. Chris Miller giving out Mad Scribe magazine. Now, Chris also gave me an advanced copy of this, The Last Viking. This is Pundits, that I believe goes with Baptism of Fire. We're going to do this separate. We'll do a separate, maybe we'll have Chris and Pundit on. They can talk about Last Viking. I don't want to kind of just shoehorn that in at the end. So one of these days I'm going to do like a Saturday stream where it'll just kind of be casual and people who want to kind of showcase their stuff, do a little shilling. You can just do that. I do that ever so often, so nothing wrong with that. But yes, Mad Scribe, here it is. It's got Whispers in Room 7, written by yours truly. There you go. I made one bonehead error. I forgot to update one of the girls, one of the NPCs. I had an initial name for her, and then I changed it, but I forgot one instance of it. So you'll figure it out. It's oh yes, show the back cover. No, there you go. There you go, you little minx. She's beautiful. All right, you get the peek for free. You gotta one of you lucky mooks is gonna own this very one. The rest of you can go to drive-through and buy it. Like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Chris has some of his musings. Interview with Earl Otis. Interview with Griff Morgan. The usual Fez and Monocle. A lot of good stuff in here. Not the least of which is Whispers in Room 7, which I based off of. If you can't tell, I based it off of H.H. Holmes's Murder House in Chicago, the World's Fair of 1893. And I'm like, what if there was just one of those in a D&D port city? How would that work? So I kind of put a little fantasy spin on it, and you can drop it in if you're a DM. And yeah, the girl or the book, nice. I'll show her one more time too. Just there you go. Yeah, what is her name again? She is Joni Brosis. Yeah, I'll give you just a picture of her. Yeah, it's a beautiful young lady, great cosplayer, good stuff. And there's some Red Sonja for you. Other good stuff in there too. So I think what we will do is, all right, so we will stop sharing that, but we will start sharing Nightbot. Start sharing our friend Nightbot. Luis Rivera, 5 memberships. You guys are very, very generous tonight. Very generous. Thank you so much. Yeah, mucho gracias. Keeping the train rolling, as we say. It's rolling. If you guys are interested in winning this, you got to type something in the chat. You have to be active for like 15 minutes. So I'll give you a little bit of time here. I'll read and highlight a few chats here. But if you do want to if you do want to be eligible to win that Mad Scribe, you have to have chatted or written something. I mean, look, it can just be a letter or whatever if you're shy, but just type something right now because it has to be within 15 minutes. Jeff is a gem indeed, Edgelord. Yep, Patty, our pal, thanking Jeff. Yep, you guys were great. You had great questions. You did a lot of the heavy lifting. Cal, thank you very much. Patrolling the grounds. She aims to please. I think you're talking about Joni. Edgelord, good get. Yeah. Yeah. Cheers indeed from one member giver to another. He likes the cut of your jib, Julio. Yeah, great interview choice. Yeah. Like I said, keep in mind, guys, I'll say it again. The reason is because I was just at Origins. I never would have ran into Jeff. It was just happenstance. I mean, who knows? Maybe somewhere along the way, but it wouldn't have been that kind of friendly, like, oh, I saw him in person. He even talked to my wife. And, my daughter at Origins just seemed like a super nice guy. I'm like, oh, you know what? This guy's going to be an easy interview. I already like the game, and damn, did not disappoint. Yep. Like I said, one day we'll have to get Jeff and Greg on because they are two very smart guys. I'm the stupid charismatic one. I'll keep the show going. Let these guys settle all the problems of the gaming world. Good to see you, Joe. Fireside chat with RPG creators. Yeah, I'd love to. I'll have to do this a little bit more often. I'm always kind of hesitant. I used to be hesitant just because I got gun shy because I've had guys like Sandy Peterson on. I've had guys like Rob Kuntz on the regular Wednesday show. And I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Me and Crazy Mouse are like, this is going to be like 300 people in the chat, and it's like, not only was it not when it was live, when those interviews were live, but they were actually less than normal. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, maybe they just don't maybe they don't like me interviewing people. So I kind of got a little gun shy about doing these types of things on Wednesdays. Sometimes I would kick them to like Saturdays and stuff like that, just because I think you guys are here mostly for a certain type of thing on Wednesdays. But occasionally, when it's a guy like this, I'll gladly do this instead of the regular Wednesday, show. Plus, it's good to change things up every once in a while. You don't want to do the same thing. Plus, my computer decided that for me when it shit the bed. The damn thing just keeps turning off and on, and it won't connect to my monitor or anything else. It's fucking frustrating because I just had RAM put into it, and they gave it AIDS. I mean, they gave it 1981 style AIDS. Like it seems like there's no coming back from this. We'll see if the Geek Squad can help. All right, so boy, there's a digression for you. Ryan, always appreciate it. The old Seaman Retention Fund. Thank you, brother. All right, let us. I don't think I missed any super chats, and I think you guys. Here's your last chance. Type something in the chat if you want to win this. Type something if you want to win that, because we will now add it to the scene. In fact, we will make it big and burly, like that chick's orc fetish. How gross. Make that a little bigger here. Chat announcement. Okay, yep. Looks like we're caught up here. All right. I think we're good. All right, something. There you go. I'll give you 10 seconds if you want to win the Mad Scribe. In fact, I will also put in right now my email. I'm also on Twitter at Wee Wheaton if you need to get a hold of me there, but you're just going to have to send me your address. So I'll give you the old business email, the business email there. All right, I'll give a quick countdown here. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. We got a long list of participants here. Yep. 103 entries, and the winner is Travis. Pop. 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 Attaboy, Travis. You popped it. You popped it. You pop this. This is coming to you. dashgabbers@gmail.com. We'll talk about this in the near future. This is Chris's publication for Pundit's book, Baptism of Fire. Now we're going up to the north. We're going out of Poland, going up to where the Vikings tread. I will have one of these to give away too. So when I do this stream, you may win one of these. Hungar, you may have to wake up your brother so he can win it. I also got this too. Now this is mine. This is from Ken and James, a great artist who's doing some work for me. Just like Wonky Keelan is, Kenan is doing some work for my adventure. So we connected, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to send you my book," and he's like, "I'd love to come on someday." This is just a pure art book, and it is cool as F. A lot of the stuff he did for Greg and other people in here. You want a good coffee table book? It's not only a good gaming book, but just put this on your freaking coffee table, man. Ooh, so many good things in here. Ooh, yeah. There. I didn't plan that, guys. I swear I didn't plan that. It's the Lamia that kind of made me question a lot of things about myself when I saw it in Greg's game. It's beautiful. Spin Gypsy, $20. Thank you, amigo. Interview away, brother. That was great. You need to shake the show up from time to time. I agree. You know, do different things every once in a while. Don't be afraid to try new things. We'll do like an Art Bell style. Just do UFO conspiracy stuff. Thank you very much, Spin Gypsy. That was quite generous. Oh, look who's here. There you go. Man, a few words. Thanks. Travis, just look back. You'll see my email. Oh, look, Nightbot sending his regards. Nightbot sends his regards. Boom. I had my one buddy, Chris, one of our jokes growing up, you know, when you're just kind of like slapping people or, you know, like everybody does this, like cup checks for guys, you know, just smacking somebody on the back of the head. My buddy, Chris would always go, hey, Double D. He'd say, hey, Moriarty sends his regards, like some old Cockney Sherlock Holmes guy, and he'd like kind of fake punch me in the stomach, kind of hit. So it was charming. We did a lot of that a lot of those shenanigans. Moriarty sends his regards. Lord, you guys are chatting away here. There you go. Michael wrote, how dare you, sir? How dare you? Beats Daggerheart talk. All right, well, that went longer than I thought. If it ended earlier, I was going to just throw the invite in there. But honestly, I have a splitting headache back here. All that computer trouble gave me a headache. So I'm going to bid adieu. I shall bid adieu. But I think I see something coming down the pike here. There you go. Ceres celebrates 1 month of membership. Can you link that art book ooh, yeah. I tell you what, I'm gonna I don't have the direct link right now. And I will have Kenan on, but I'm going to put it, Ken and James, Monsters. I think you can find it on Amazon. So thank you, Sarix, if that is your name. Yeah, just Google that. I think you should be able to find it. Just do a Google search, and then yeah, I think you'll also find it on Amazon. Malachi. Maybe at I was raised a poor child. Can I get the link? Link to what? What are you guys giving links to? Hit the like button before you leave. Yeah, you should be able to find it. It's high quality. Like the art kind of has a like the cover has this kind of weird feel to it. I don't know, it just feels good. It's not like raised up. It almost feels like it should be. But that makes a statement there. But also, guys, as always, if you want to see what I can do as far as just a little mini adventure here. I've been published in Dungeon before. I'm not a rank amateur. I've had a couple things published. But I'm in here, and there's a lot of other good stuff in here too. There really is. So Travis Pop, I'll get that to you. But the rest of you guys who didn't win, just follow the link in the description. I always have Chris's stuff in there just because he's an OG. So yeah, you can just go right there, and you can grab Mad Scribe 11. Bleaker. Good to see you, buddy. I'm sorry, you guys. I probably ignored a lot of you. I wasn't ignoring you guys. Yeah, I think you understand. Like I'm conducting an interview. I have to listen to what Jeff's saying, and I'm kind of keeping one eye on the chat. I don't want to be one of those guys who's reading the chat, and while my guest is talking, I'm like, yeah, that's great. Oh yeah. So anyway, and then I ask the same question that he just answered. So, I was able to get all your supers up there, and most of them were pertinent. Thank you very much. Most of them were pertinent to what we were talking about. You guys are great. Yeah, improves once I leave. Just don't understand why. It does not, sir. You are what is best in men, Bleaker. R.I.P. Rogan. Yes. The legend lives on from the Chippewa on. Great down to the Great Lake they call Gitchigumi. Yeah, Rogan is alive and well. I had to tell both of them. I literally at like 6 o'clock or close to. I'm like, stay home tonight, guys. I got no work for you. Thanks to the punks at my local. No, I'm sure it was just something goofy that happened. So we'll get to the bottom of it. And if not, as Crazy Mouse says, just call in the Geek Squad. He's like, Double D, just call in the Geek Squad. He's huge on the Best Buy Geek Squad. So we'll see. All right. Bye. Oh boy. End with a little holy diver. I could end with your commercial too. All right, we'll do both. All right, I will send you out with some holy diver. Why not? Why not? But first I'll give you a little commercial I cut for Chris. All right, guys, thank you so much. Pay attention. Hopefully I'll be doing a video or maybe an in-between stream. I'm not sure if it'll be this Saturday or next. So many people are hitting me up. I guess this is a sign that you sort of made it. Everybody's like, could you please help me sell my stuff? I'm like, well, look, there's certain things I buy and like I'm into, and things I contribute to, like Mad Scribe and Hyperborea and all that stuff. But I will allow you to sell your products. I'll give you the use of my my airwaves, so to speak. But you gotta do the heavy lifting yourself. So I will open that up sometime soon here to people that want to sell some stuff. The old shill stream, as it were. All right, guys, take care. We'll talk soon. Thanks again for tuning in, coming in strong. I need not be worried. because you guys came out in force tonight. And as always, the chat was great. That's right, my largesse. Joe, my largesse. All right, take care. We'll talk soon. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Peace. Peace.
But don't you see what I mean?